Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. My Wife is Black Phoenix. Chapter 81. Ding. Congratulations to the host, for 10 consecutive draws on the planes of the heavens. A burst of luck. Successfully drawn to the plane of Dragon Ball, Shondo bag. Ding. Congratulations to the host for 10 consecutive draws on the planes of the heavens. Luck has exploded. Successfully drawn to the pirate plane, 1 sliding fruit. Ding. Congratulations to the host, for 10 consecutive draws from the planes of the heavens, and successfully draw the plane of Batman, Catwoman's tight leather clothes set. In the blink of an eye, more than half of the 10 consecutive draws have passed. Smoked several times in a row. The explosions are good or bad. If it is changed to the next day, Luyan may feel excited about it, and even startled roar to speak out. But right now, looking at the things exploded on the system page, Luyan's brows tightened. The complexion of the whole person also seemed particularly solemn. No way, at the moment 9 consecutive pumps did not reveal what he needed. This naturally disappointed him. On the system side, when will it be possible to launch a designated lottery function? He murmured silently in his heart. Then, all hopes are pinned on the last draw. After taking a deep breath, he took the last lottery ticket in his hand and chose to use it again. Ding. A crisp sound. The lottery page scrolls up again. After a while, a bright golden light suddenly lit up in front of him. Yes, congratulations to the host for 10 consecutive draws, the draw was successful. The luck is so good that it explodes. Extract to the new system character template. From the League of Legends plane, Wandering Magician, Rise. I went, the new system character template. Luyan looked at him, and the whole person couldn't help but cheer up. A light flashed through the fundus of the eyes. But after a moment of excitement, it's unavoidable to be a little bit lost. The new system template is naturally very good. But this thing, it seems that it has nothing to do with the illness on Chin's side. It's terrible. How to solve this stuff? Is it possible that you really have to follow the storyline of Dark Phoenix and go again? Let Chin kill the quartet. Thinking like this, Luyan lowered his head again. Anyway, at this moment in my heart, I scolded Professor X as a dog blood spray. CGAD, seriously, he thinks that although the young Charles has ideals, his ability to teach and educate is really average. This is so much. Only then did I think of imposing spiritual imprisonment on Chin's mind. Although when I was a child, my parents were killed because of Chin ability, which can indeed be regarded as a childhood shadow. In doing so, she can return to her innocent state. But to do so is to treat the symptoms rather than the root cause. As Chin's ability increases, this shackle will be broken by her sooner or later. Isn't this burying mine in the future? Luyan thought, his brows wrinkled and tightened. When I was at a loss. Suddenly, I felt cold from the center of my eyebrows. Exited from the system space. Only then discovered that, at some point, the girl Chin was already sitting next to him. Right now, that little hand like a jade onion is helping him rub his brows repeatedly. Seeing this, Luyan's expression moved slightly. Nothing to say at the moment. The Chin in front of him already understood what he meant. Reaching out his hand, he has already blocked his mouth. First comforted, stop talking, Luyan, it's okay, you don't have to worry about me too much, I will get old problems too, just a little control. As Chin said, his head dropped slightly, and his eyes looked a little guilty. He was obviously apologetic for the trouble caused to Luyan by his actions this time. Look at her expression. Luyan also felt a pain in his heart. I pity this little girl more and more. Shin said, why does the background story of the X-Men have such a miserable character setting? Hey, if I have the magic that can reverse all time, it will be fine. When that time comes, I will go directly to my childhood and organize Professor X's behavior towards Chin Gray. It is estimated that there will be no future things. When he spoke, he was just a casual mutter. But after the words were really spoken, his whole body is inevitably another one. Then, suddenly there was light in his eyes. Wait, time magic, reverse everything, Luyan muttered to himself like a dream. The whole person was shocked. Looking at the piano next to Gray, his heart immediately picked up. To Luyan's side, he was busy and said again, what's wrong? Luyan, are you okay? She was worried that Luyan would think too much about her own business. As for Luyan, listening to what she said at this moment, and then returning to God, the whole person is more excited. At this time, he took the initiative to step forward, even in front of everyone, and kissed Chin Gray's face again. Excited. I'm fine, I thought of a way to help you, Chin. How? What are you talking about? Shouldn't it really want to reverse the time? Chin was also a little curious after hearing this. She said this. He was secretly listening to the bullseye at the root of the wall and the little daredevil, and instantly became interested. At this time, the ears were all pricked up. Lu Yan smiled when he saw this. He shook his head and denied directly. Definitely cannot be a means to reverse time. Not to mention, according to Marvel 4, reverse the future set in, change the past, cannot change the future at all. Just say that now, he wants to reverse time, and the conditions are not allowed. At this moment, the reason why I am so excited is that I follow the reversal of time and magic. These two keywords, I think of the undoubtedly one of the strongest on Earth in the Marvel Universe, Ancient One Magician. Yes, just the timeline Lu Yan is currently in. The Revenge Alliance has not yet been established. It's impossible to think of Asgard going to Thor or Heavenly Father Odin for help. I really want to say, if you are on the Earth at this moment, who else can help contain and even guide the Phoenix Force in Chin Gray's body at this time? Ancient One Magician, no doubt. Moreover, if the key to controlling this energy, as Captain Marvel said, it is the strength of mental power. That Ancient One Magician can help, even more. People are really experts in this area. And not only on the Earth, but the entire universe is one of the best. Compared with Professor X, Ancient One Magician is obviously the best candidate for Teacher Chin Gray. Lu Yan sighed with emotion, looking at the piano next to Gray, although he didn't explain much. But at this moment in my heart, I had already made up my mind. In any case, we must find a way to let Phoenix go online with Ancient One Magician. Thinking like this, speak again. Then he said to Chin Gray again. Clean up, Jin, let's go to downtown New York in a while. Where to go, downtown? Chin Gray was taken aback. Lu Yan nodded and broke his impression of the address of the holy place in New York. Well, 177A Blick Street. Blick neighborhood, we are so good, what are we going to do there? Jean Grey is even more confused. Lu Yan didn't hide it either. He spoke directly at the moment and said the purpose of the trip. Go find you a master. Find a master. Jin Grey is completely blinded. But at this moment, I come back to my mind again, but I also ask more questions. Anyway, she also knew that Lu Yan would definitely not harm her. So nodded at the moment. If he took another step, he also picked up things obediently. That's all. Chin Gray and Lu Yan returned to their own small video room. But just had lunch. He left home in a hurry. In the Doctor Strange, I rushed over to the New York holy place described. Master, rush to the Blick block and stop at the sign door in the shape of an inclined well. It's fine. Lu Yan stopped a taxi and said so to the black driver ahead. After that, he closed his eyes and lay on the back seat, playing the piano, and began to wait patiently. Both are in New York. The distance is not far. So according to Lu Yan's preliminary estimate, they will be able to reach the holy place in New York in just over 10 minutes at most. But now I have been walking for more than half an hour. The taxi showed no signs of stopping. This made Lu Yan a little bit unable to sit still. Then he opened his eyes, raised his head, and then looked at the black taxi driver in front of him, and said again with some irritation. No, sir, you treat me as a foreigner, deliberately detour, wanting to kill the guest. Lu Yan was very upset. He didn't expect that the simple folklore of Rice Lijan, in addition to killing people and setting fires, would actually carry passengers. Is there anything better in New York? And he just said this. The taxi driver driving in front showed a more innocent expression than Lu Yan. He opened his mouth again. Young man, what are you talking about? How could I just circumvent your way? We've already reached the Blick block, but haven't you found it? I've been back and forth here 3 or 4 times. But I really haven't seen the iconic building of the inclined shaft type. The taxi driver looked wrong. Chin Gray, who is next to him, seems to be worried about Lu Yan's anger. Hastily stretched out his hand and pulled his sleeves, also defending him. Yes, yeah, Lu Yan, don't blame him. I have been paying attention to the outside situation during the period, and I really didn't see your sign. You haven't seen it? Lu Yan was taken aback when he heard the news. The first reaction of the whole person right now is naturally that he has remembered his address incorrectly. But then come back again. When I patted my forehead, I thought of something again. Secretly cursed in confusion. How can a place like Holy Place in New York appear in front of the public in a grand manner? Isn't that clear? To provoke a special intelligence organization like S.H.I.E.L.D. to come and investigate. I remember that in Doctor Strange, they seemed to have laid a spiritual barrier near the holy place. Only magician or those with special ability can see where the holy place in New York is. So it's normal that the taxi driver can't see it right now. No wonder he couldn't be found, but he was wrong to say so. Lu Yan thought to his heart, unapologetic. After a clear cough. When he opened his mouth again, he revealed the exact address of the holy place in New York. The taxi driver will be much better now to hear the exact location. Immediately turn the steering wheel and step on the accelerator. In less than half a minute, it stopped in front of an apartment building. Lu Yan gave a little more tip as an apologize. Then He Chin got out of the car and looked at the nameplate on the upper floor of the apartment. Well, exactly what he said earlier, 177A Blick Street. It's really easy to find. Lu Yan sighed. Next to Chin Gray, looking at the apartment, he was a little confused, and asked Lu Yan next to him. Lu Yan, could it be that the mentor you mentioned earlier that can help me is in this apartment building? Yes, nor is it. Lu Yan laughed. He added another sentence and asked her to stand here and wait for a while. After that, I personally ran to the outside of this apartment building to check it out. When he first came here, Lu Yan was full of confidence. But now, I'm really at the door of this apartment. Lu Yan just made it difficult again. Only then did I realize that I seemed to have no choice but to walk directly into the holy place in New York. How on earth should I destroy the barrier of mental power? I can't let me call Ancient One directly in the street. Wouldn't it be regarded as a neurosis and taken away by the police directly? Lu Yan looked tangled, then turned his head and naturally asked the system the first time. I want to know if there is a way to help him break through the barriers and restrictions on the outside of the system. Enter Gray with piano. Beep. The system can't actively help the host to break the outer mental barrier. The host needs to deal with it on its own. The system replied. When it said that, Lu Yan's expression was a bit ugly for an instant. No good airway. Isn't this nonsense? I want a way to get rid of this restriction, and come to you. You can't let me use the fruitful ability, just crush this stuff directly. Although that said, it may really be able to force people out of the New York holy place, but I came here on this trip, but I didn't come here to smash the place. But came to apprentice with the piano. Lu Yan looked depressed. I feel a little puzzled. However, then the system spoke again, and a word made him stand still. The whole person's eyes lit up again in an instant. Host, is it possible that I forgot my newly extracted character template? New character template? You mean, Wandering Magician Rise? Lu Yan was shocked. When returning to the senses, I feel that the pot is empowering. Suddenly there was a golden glow in the double walls. Only then did I understand the meaning of the system. Yes, he can't see the holy place in New York right now because he has no potential to become a magician. But after it is really equipped with the character template of the Wandering Magician Rise, the situation is quite different. That's Rise. In League of Legends, Runaland is the oldest magician. Just this guy, that extraordinary magic ability. Even if Lu Yan just awakening the character template, I want to come and break the restrictions other than this New York holy place, it should be more than enough. He was stern, thinking like this, and immediately said to the system in his own heart. Then what are you waiting for? The system, please activate it as a template for me directly. Beep. Feel the request from the host, Wandering Magician Rise character template binding. Activation progress. 5%. 0.10%. 0.30%. 0.50%. 100%. Wandering Magician Rise, the binding is successful. Introduction to the bound character. Rise is one of the most widely known ancient magicians in Runaland. Secret knowledge. He is destined to become the most powerful magician in the world. Now the host has 0.05% control over the character template rise. Unable to learn active skills. Activate passive skills. Arcane specialization. Arcane specialization, skill description. It greatly increases the host's perception ability for arcane fluctuations. It will cause the host's skills to cause additional damage based on his mana bonus, and its maximum mana will be based on his spell strength to get a percentage increase. This is the activation successful. Passive skills. Olympic mathematics specialization. Sounds like it's fierce, but why don't I feel the slightest strangeness at all right now? Lu Yan lowered his head and muttered to himself. With that said, the voice did not fall. Suddenly felt his head sink. The whole person almost fell to the ground. Ah, Lu Yan, what's wrong with you? Phoenix saw this in the back, with anxiety in his heart, and hurriedly reached out to help him up. Lu Yan waved her hand quickly, indicating that she didn't have to. After spitting breath, he raised his head again. His eyes seemed to be too confident compared to before. Because just now, in his head, there is inexplicably a lot of secret knowledge from Runeterra. I don't know if it was following the influx of knowledge in the 9-9 period. Anyway, right now, when he looks at this world, after tightening his fists tightly, looking up again, he cast his gaze to the apartment in front of him. After taking a deep breath, take a few steps forward. The picture that the whole person sees is totally different from before. The ordinary apartment building that had originally appeared in his eyes finally disappeared. What appeared in front of him again was an ancient castle-like palace building. Lu Yan looked excited, and then stretched out his hand, then grabbed the slender hand of Phoenix next to him. Silly girl, don't think too much, look forward. Lu Yan spoke and reminded Phoenix. Phoenix originally wanted to ask Lu Yan what was going on with his dizziness just now. Hearing the news at this time, he raised his head again and looked at the scene in front of him. The whole person also fell into sluggishness immediately. Is this the inclined well-shaped building you were talking about, Lu Yan? It's amazing, how did it appear? Phoenix looked incredible. Remember how you helped me hide from everyone's sight before? Lu Yan reminded. Phoenix thought of the scene where she took Lu Yan and disappeared directly from Nick Fury. Vaguely, I also understood something. Spiritual power. Is this the function of mental power? Accurately speaking, it is the magical technique. Let's go in and talk about it. I don't know if the teacher I want to find for you is here. Lu Yan patted Phoenix on the shoulder. Said so. I walked directly to the door of the holy place in New York. Reached out and pushed open the door. Because this holy place has a mental barrier outside. Most people can't get close at all. So the door is not locked at all. The two pushed the door and walked into it from outside. When I saw my eyes, I only felt the atmosphere of quaint vicissitudes of life. Although in Doctor Strange's movie, Lu Yan also watched leopards and admired the scenery of the holy place in New York. But after I really came here, I couldn't avoid feeling again. I feel that this place truly deserves the name of Magician Holy Place. But at the moment, before he has Phoenix here, let's take a good look at the scenery here. It was at this point that suddenly there was a violent shout coming from my ears. The thief from somewhere is so daring to trespass into New York's holy place. The sound was loud, like a muffled thunder, which exploded in the ears of the two of them. Follow the two to look up. I saw a black man wearing a gray robe, suddenly rushing out of the holy place. At this time, the gazes looking at the two of them were full of vigilance and alert. The man in the gray robe reacted like this. Lu Yan watched the man rush out at this moment, but he couldn't avoid another strange color passing through his eyes. He naturally recognizes who this guy is. When he spoke again, he subconsciously called out his name. Carmado. Yes, this guy is the guide of Stephen Strange in Doctor Strange, Baron Mordor. The author checked the information. This guy, in the comics, the age is not too young, so let him appear early. Lu Yan didn't expect Baron Mordor to appear here. And looking at the faction, it should be the guardian magician of Holy Place in New York. And the other end, Baron Mordor, who had just walked out of the depths of the Holy Place in New York, was unavoidably stunned. Obviously, I didn't expect that Lu Yan would recognize himself here. But after a moment of astonishment, he returned to his senses. Not only did he not relax his vigilance because of this, but he was also on guard. Instead, he became more and more angry. Obviously, from his point of view, this has completely become an organized and premeditated intrusion. So snorted coldly at the moment. There is no nonsense, but the secret technique is directly operated. The condensed magic whip drew it toward the front. I plan to give these two uninvited guests a good lesson. Hey! The magic whip came galloping with the sound of breaking wind at this moment. Lu Yan saw this, his pupils suddenly shrank. Naturally, he hurriedly pulled Phoenix back. Although the New York holy place has a special architecture, it is still above the earth after all. So Lu Yan still has no problem using gravity. It's not difficult to dodge the opponent's attack right now. Just lower your head. Looking at the ground with a crack of several meters deep, his eyes inevitably grew a little dignified. Looking up again, looking at Baron Mordor's gaze, he naturally hurriedly spoke, wanting to explain. Don't get me wrong, Baron Mordor, we came here this time without any malice. We just came here to apprentice. Apprentice? Yes, my girlfriend wants to worship Ancient One as a teacher. Lu Yan continued, although the voice was very sincere. But because of preconceived notions on Baron Mordor's side, he just regarded this as Lu Yan's nonsense. Hearing this, he hummed coldly again, said, if you want to approve a teacher, you can, first disarm you, and let's talk about it after being obedient. Baron Mordor shouted. While speaking, his hands kept moving. At this time, he stepped forward and rushed forward. As he stepped forward, a series of bright magical ripples immediately appeared under his feet. Immediately afterwards, a shocking scene appeared. Baron Mordor actually walked straight away. And the speed is several times faster than normal people. It was bad, and it appeared directly in the air. Ah, how is this done? Female Phoenix looked at her from the side, her mouth grew, shape. At this moment, there was some doubt whether the Baron Mordor in front of him was the same as his boyfriend. Has the ability to control gravity. On Lu Yan's side, he looked still. Just when he raised his eyes and looked at the shoes under Mordu's feet, there was a strange look across his eyes. Ancient artifacts, Buddha's boots, are they interesting? Lu Yan was surprised, but Mordo was distracted by the people below, and felt very unhappy. Think this is a great contempt. So snorted coldly at this time. Leaving again, like an eagle, swooped down directly from above the air. Reached out and grabbed the long roots around his waist, shaking again. Noisy. The long stick is wrapped in magic. It immediately became a hot thunder whip. Immediately, he slapped the two men below. Another ancient artifact, the Staff of the Court of Life. In fact, Baron Mordor used his first artifact. Lu Yan was not so shocked yet. What really surprised him was the second artifact in the hands of Baron Mordo, the Staff of the Court of Life. Severe Marvel fans should understand. Life Court, what exactly do these four words mean? This is in the comics, but the guy who can judge the entire universe. When he was watching the movie, he was a little confused. I want to know if this scepter really comes from the Life Court in Marvel. It now appears that the power and authority is stringent. But there is still a big distance from the Life Court that he envisioned in his heart. Coincidence? No, it's possible, really have a little relationship. But it should not be a scepter with 100% Life Court power. Otherwise, rely on this thing alone. Knock it down with a stick. I am afraid that Thanos, who is full of diamonds with 6 stars, will be directly knocked to death. However, even so, this is a rare baby. Lu Yan thought. The bottom of his eyes couldn't avoid showing a coveted look. This thing, he wants it. Fighting with it seems to be more handsome than holding a Tang Dao. Although Lu Yan didn't really say this idea in his heart, his eyes had already betrayed himself. This made the Baron Mordo, who stormed towards it in midair. At this moment, the anger grew stronger. He has never experienced such a situation. During the battle, the opponent just got distracted. He even became greedy for his weapons. What is this for? Humiliated, I will make you pay. Thinking of this, Baron Mordor roared again. At this moment, above the thunder whip in his hand, the thunder light instantly skyrocketed more than a few meters again. At this time, from the perspective of outsiders, it really looked like a sword of thunder. At this moment, with the force of Wanjin, he slashed violently downwards. That terrifying power. It made Phoenix's pupils close up suddenly. Roar was shocked at the moment, and then raised his hand, also intending to help Lu Yan here, shot to resist. Fortunately, it's also on this critical juncture. Lu Yan, who had been distracted all the time, finally woke up again. At this time, his hands were still carrying his back and did not move. But right now, his right foot stepped forward, followed by a tremor. In an instant it is a series of purple light waves, surging out from before him. Heavy Fruit's ability, anti-gravity. Countless purple light waves converge at this moment, like an invisible aura. And the thunder whip waved by Baron Mordor slammed into each other fiercely. When the two collided, I heard a series of popping noises. At this moment, even the mere light of thunder that escaped had already blasted the floor around them. However, the one shot beheaded by Baron Mordor, or the scene of directly flying Lu Yan, did not appear. At this moment, on the contrary, I felt the power that was rolled back from this purple light wave. Under the snort, the whole body was shot by Lu Yan directly. With a plop, his figure fell to the ground again. In Baron Mordor's mouth, blood inevitably rushed out. The figure landed again. Looking at Lu Yan's gaze, there was both horror and puzzlement. Obviously, it was really unexpected. At the moment, Rage shot himself. It was so easy to be blocked by the other party. Who is this guy? Baron Mordo was suspicious. Unfortunately, at this time, Lu Yan no longer had any interest in explaining his identity to him. Looking at the fallen Baron Mordor, he even coldly snorted, with the same unhappiness on his face. What's the matter? Now I'm beaten down and want to ask someone else's identity. Why did you go? It was just an accident just now. Baron Mordor was not as mature and serious as he was later. At this time, hearing Lu Yan say so, my heart was aroused again. As I said now, struggling to get up, I was about to fight Lu Yan again. But on Lu Yan's side, where would give him a second chance? Raise his right hand. The void is facing down, another press. 80 times the gravity of the fruit. In an instant, the light wave moved again. At this time, the purple aperture fell on Baron Mordo. It's like being pressed down by a big mountain. Originally, Baron Mordor, who was hit by Lu Yan just now, was injured. Feel the pressure of this terrifying weight at this moment. His complexion, even more instantaneously, turned pale. Although my heart is full of upset. But at this moment, it was really imprisoned by Lu Yan. The suppressed ground can no longer move. You guy is not a magician at all. It's not fair, you guys want to do it. Baron Mordor yelled. Lu Yan heard the news, but didn't make any excuses. At the moment, the corners of his mouth rose up with a nice arc instead. Because it was accompanied by Mordor's speech right now. In Lu Yan's mind, there was another system prompt, which rang. Ding! Congratulations to the host for successfully defeating Baron Mordo and unlocking new achievements. The completion of the character template Wandering Magician has increased to 8.27%. Interesting, I was worried about how to improve the completion of this new character template. Now it looks the same as before. Are they all improved by unlocking achievement rewards? Lu Yan thought so. After returning to his senses, he stepped forward and picked up the stand of the Court of Life that Mordor had fallen on the ground. It was so grandiose that it was in my arms. What are you doing? That's my weapon. Although the body is suppressed by gravity, it cannot move. But Mordo is a magician who has practiced for many years. The physical strength is also very comparable. Seeing this time, I spoke, and hurriedly surprised Roar. When he heard him say that, Lu Yan's mouth was scarred, and showed an expression of disapproval. It's reasonable to say definitely. What your weapon is in my hands, naturally it is my weapon. Lu Yan is confident. Stretching out his hand again, he directly held the stand of the Court of Life to my waist. Watch him move. Baron Mordor only felt a sweet throat. Then the face was green and red, and it began to change crazily. Think about it too, who to replace it with. Failed to fight back against the invaders, they were also seized by the opponent. It is estimated that it will be the same reaction. Angry. On Baron Mordor's side, Lu Yan was really going to vomit blood. But at this moment, Lu Yan didn't care what he was thinking. Who told this guy to fight to death as soon as he came up, without giving him any opportunity to explain? Angry now. It's better to be angry. I wish I could make you angry for a while. It is impossible for him to retaliate with virtue. Lu Yan at most, it means repaying virtue with virtue and directly reporting grievances. You didn't give me face before, why should I give you face now? Not only want to grab your things, Lu Yan still has the heart, and intends to continue teasing the Baron Mordor in front of him. However, at the moment, he hasn't waited for any more actions. Behind this is the depths of the holy place in New York, but there is another magic portal that lights up. Danger. Although Lu Yan hadn't seen clearly who came out from behind the magic portal at this time. But right now, accompanied by the moment when the magic portal appeared. But I clearly felt it, and an extremely terrifying aura poured out of it. Oops, go back. The alarm bell in his heart was overwhelming, and he hurriedly stretched out his hand and pulled the piano next to him, and he was about to retreat quickly. But at this moment, if I want to leave again, it seems to be too late. Turn around again. The corridor leading to the entrance of Holy Place in New York started to twist. The whole building began to turn upside down. It's more like a terrifying abyss cracked under their feet. No time for Lu Yan to react at all. Accompanied by the sound of startled roar, in the abyss on Phoenix's side. Lu Yan exclaimed, although I know, this thing may not be able to kill Qin. But watching his girlfriend being treated like this, Lu Yan still couldn't avoid getting a little angry. He raised his eyes again and looked at the entrance of the passage, and he also growled low. Ancient One, stop me. He didn't see who the mysterious person walking out of the entrance was, but he didn't need to look anymore at this time. Look at the entire magician world. It is so easy to do this step. There is only Ancient One magician alone. So at this moment, accompanied by a low growl, he raised his hand sharply, and with another punch, he went forward violently. This time, Lu Yan finally stopped keeping. Completely motivated his own ability, which is full of fruits. And now, as he urged all ability to move, following everyone, I felt that the whole New York holy place was trembling. Do not. To be precise, it shouldn't be a feeling anymore. It is true that the entire holy place in New York began to tremble with Lu Yan's anger. Layers of purple light surged from Lu Yan's body. The terrifying gravity falls. It seems that in the next instant, the entire New York holy place will be completely shattered under his anger. Not far away, Baron Mordor, who had fallen to the ground, saw this. Finally, there was another panic in his eyes. Only then did I understand where the limits of the young man in front of him lie. At the same time, in the back, Ancient One magician, who had just walked out of the portal, raised his head and felt Lu Yan's anger. I can't help but sigh with emotion. A compliment sentence, what a terrifying ability. However, at the moment, instead, a flash came directly to Lu Yan and raised his hand. It was just a palm and patted Lu Yan's new taste. When watching movies before, Lu Yan always listened to others about how powerful Ancient One is. But really speaking, his feelings about this are really not obvious. And right now, when he really encounters Ancient One and meets her face to face, Lu Yan realized that he was wrong. And it was quite wrong. How ridiculous was the idea that I was so arrogant before that I thought I could be halfway between me and Ancient One. This guy is so powerful that it is inhuman. It feels that in Doctor Strange's movies, her ability is weakened. How do you say that? It's not you, Caecilius, but I don't want to play Ancient One magician anymore. Well, that's almost what it means. Otherwise, at the level of that rebellious apprentice, I think it would be difficult to injure Ancient One. Definitely, it may be Ancient One more than 10 years later. Compared to the current state, it has declined. And just for the moment, Ancient One is undoubtedly its peak state. Love in this situation, Lu Yan didn't even notice what was going on. The opponent had already split the portal and appeared behind him. Then slap a palm directly on his sky spirit cover. The explosion resounded like Hong Zhang Dalu, suddenly echoing in Lu Yan's mind. When Lu Yan came back to his senses, he still didn't react to what happened. I discovered that my body and soul have been completely separated. Although at this moment, he can still feel the power of fruitful fruits. But without the support of a strong physique, his combat power can be said to have fallen by more than half in an instant. Even the holy place in New York, which was trembling just now, immediately recovered calm. As for Baron Mordor, who had been suppressed by him before, At this time, he turned over and finally got rid of Lu Yan's gravity control. Get up from the ground and look at Lu Yan's gaze again. That's a quick one. Then he opened his mouth and said repeatedly to Ancient One next to him, Master, you must never keep your hands. This guy trespassed in our New York holy place. He is unpredictable and must be dealt with strictly. MMP, it seems that I just beat you lightly. Lu Yan gritted his teeth. He looked at the opposite Baron Mordor bitterly. It is also ruthless. Shin said that if he didn't die this time, he would be better off in the future. He stared at him with such eyes. Baron Mordor's body shuddered. She was about to say something more. After looking up and down Lu Yan's state, his expression suddenly changed. Can't help but startled roar uttered aloud. With his startled roar sound, Lu Yan returned to his senses, and then discovered Ancient One Magician. Since he became the state of the soul body, the current state seems to be a bit wrong. At this moment, I have been looking at myself in a daze. At first, he thought Ancient One Magician was waiting for his own defense. After taking a closer look at the opponent now, but he found that the situation was still a little different from what he had expected. Ancient One Magician looked into his own gaze at this time. It's not scrutiny, it's stunned and curious. It felt like finding a rare treasure. Looking at their gazes, Lu Yan's first reaction was naturally dazed. But then I lowered my head and looked at my spiritual body, and then it became clear. I understand why they reacted this way. It's the passive skill of Rune Magician Rise. Lu Yan was still curious before, what effect does this passive skill awakening have? It's finally clear now. After co-authoring Mathematical Olympiad to specialize this passive skill awakening, in addition to allowing him to have a significant improvement in his perception of runes compared to the previous one. Even Nonuo Hao is also an invisible, and the state of the astral body has also changed. It's like Lu Yan's spirit body right now, compared to the appearance of an ordinary person in his own body. But there have been too many changes. It's not just a circle of dark blue patterns on the skin. Around the body, there are even mysterious runes appearing in the shop. Like a god ring, it surrounds his whole person. On every spell, what is beating is the brilliance of magic. Lu Yan naturally recognizes these spells. These are all secret spells from Runaland. But these spells, he felt familiar, the opposite of Baron Mordor and Ancient One Magician, they knew nothing. However, it is precisely because of ignorance. This scene is very attractive to Sorcerer Supreme, who has been immersed in magic learning almost all his life. Looking at Lu Yan, he spoke after a moment of silence, and finally took the initiative to ask Lu Yan again, saying, Lu Yan, who are you? Lu Yan, who are you? How did your special soul state come into being? Hearing the words of Ancient One, even Baron Mordor, who was indignant beside him, fell silent. At this moment, looking up at Lu Yan's gaze, there was also curiosity. Obviously, it was the first time they encountered such a weird soul state. At this moment, looking at the two people with this kind of gaze, he threw it towards him. Lu Yan also understood something instantly. But at this moment, if you speak again, there is no truth in telling the truth. Instead, it started to flicker again. Directly reported a name that they had never heard of. Proudly said, Supreme Body. What? Supreme Body? When Lu Yan said this, everyone was naturally stunned again. After a while, he recovered. Baron Mordor was able to roar up directly. There is no good way towards Lu Yan. Boy, don't talk nonsense there. Magician asks you, I advise you to answer truthfully, otherwise, you will feel better. Don't forget that you are a prisoner now. Baron Mordo stared, saying that this was somewhat intimidating to Lu Yan. But Lu Yan didn't panic at the moment. On the contrary, the expression on his face became more calm and leisurely. Who lied to you? What I said is true. This is the Supreme Body. I was born to be the spirit body of Sorcerer Supreme. As for my body, why does it appear in this state? Sorry, I don't know. Didn't you just say it all? I'm already a prisoner. Do you think that a prisoner is under your control right now, and it's okay? Would you still use this kind of thing to deceive you? Then I'm not crazy. What he said, Baron Mordor's brows were already frowning. I wanted to say something more. But beside Ancient One Magician, he took the conversation first, and looked at Lu Yan. I have lived for endless years and have never heard of what is destined to become the soul of Sorcerer Supreme. Lu Yan, are you sure you are not lying to me? I have to remind you that I most hate that people lie to me. As Ancient One Magician said, a cold light flashed through his eyes. Looking at the chill passing through her eyes at this moment, Lu Yan's body shuddered. Not now, there is no turning back arrow in the bow. He has said this, and he can only continue to flicker. In fact, this is really helpless. No way, he couldn't beat Ancient One again, let alone negotiate terms with her. Right now, after thinking about it, it seems that I can only increase my influence in Ancient One Magician's heart in this way. Otherwise, he would be treated as an intruder and be beaten and thrown out. Eternal life, no one step closer to the holy place in New York or Kamar Taj. Isn't Phoenix's disease completely finished? It's not that his heart is getting more and more anxious. Fortunately, there was no flaw in the eyes. Hearing what Ancient One said, he nodded solemnly, and said, "Definitely won't lie to you. What good is it for me to lie to you? Don't you find any abnormalities in my physique? The fellow Baron Mordor just now, aren't you still curious about how I got into the holy place in New York? I'm telling you now, I just walked in so grandiosely. The spiritual barrier at the gate of holy place in New York is for me, did not play any blocking role at all. If I remember correctly, that stuff is usually used to screen magicians, right? He doesn't know anything about magic, but he can walk through the holy place safely. Doesn't this prove what I said? That only proves that you do have the ability to become a magician, but it doesn't mean that you have something. Sorcerer Supreme was obtained through hard work, so it's not destined to do so." Baron Mordor spoke angrily beside him, and his eyes became more and more resentful when he said this. Obviously, Lu Yan is getting more and more unhappy. For all magicians, Ancient One's Sorcerer Supreme position is undoubtedly the most noble existence in their hearts. It is also the goal they want to pursue in their lifetime. For this title, the CGAD side of Baron Mordor, even when he was dreaming, did not dare to have any extravagant thoughts in his dreams. But right now, he didn't know where to come out of a stinky boy, and he opened his mouth and said that he was destined to become Sorcerer Supreme. How could this make him accept it? So at the moment, it is normal. He was so, the opposite of Ji Yuyi's heart, but there was another stormy sea. Far from being as calm as it appears on the surface. Mordor believes that man can conquer the sky, and Sorcerer Supreme comes from practice. Her Ancient One was really clear in her heart, and she was destined to say it. For example, she once used Time Gem's ability to spy on the future, the most powerful Sorcerer Supreme among them. But the destined Sorcerer Supreme is not the guy in front of him. Could it be that the future I'm watching is wrong? Ji Yu, the first time I doubted myself. But he shook his head immediately afterwards. If it's just a prying error, it's okay to say. But during this period, she did no less than hundreds of deductions. Almost every result leads to the same path. The destined Sorcerer Supreme is the one who is still in medical school, studying hard, hoping to become the best neurosurgeon guy in the world. That guy is the destined next Sorcerer Supreme. Ancient One also went to probe the other party. Whether it is ability or personal qualifications. They are indeed the top ones among them. But right now, if the other party is the destined Sorcerer Supreme, then what's the matter with Lu Yan? Thinking so. Ancient One Magician's thoughts were flying, but he couldn't help but think of the scene where he and Lu Yan met for the first time. At that time, I used Eye of Agamotto to calculate Lu Yan's future. Ancient One got nothing. At that time, he didn't seem to have any magic fluctuations or potentials revealed. But how long has it passed before and after? 48 hours, right? What happened to Lu Yan? The magician potential suddenly appeared again. Could it be that I was the one who missed it again? The more you think so, the deeper the doubts in Ancient One Magician's mind. After a long time, his gaze fell on Lu Yan's spirit body again, surrounding the batch of mysterious runes. Finally, I couldn't help it, and sighed again in my heart. Faintly spit out 2 words. Variable. She finally gave Lu Yan the situation at the moment. Made the most accurate judgment. That is the variable. And even she, the Sorcerer Supreme, can't see through the biggest variable in the entire Marvel universe. Interesting. I just don't know, is the appearance of this variable like him good or bad? Ancient One whispered in her own mind, although Lu Yan's future was still misty to her. But she is not the kind of pessimistic person who is unreasonably worried. In other words, with the strength of Ancient One at this moment, she really doesn't fear any changes in the future universe. On the contrary, it is full of curiosity and eagerness to try. Precisely because of this, even though he knows that Lu Yan is full of weirdness, he can't even believe what he just said about the Supreme Body. But after returning to God, it suddenly laughed, taking the stubbornly with interest, then said, "Interesting. Then what is the purpose of your presence here right now? Could it be true, as you just said to the transition, this time I made a special trip to worship me as a teacher, planning to become the next Sorcerer Supreme? Apprentice, you say me?" Lu Yan stretched his finger to himself. Suddenly he laughed again, and then waved his hands again and again. No, you misunderstood, Ancient One Magician, I made a special trip to bring my girlfriend over to apprentice this time. My girlfriend, you should have seen the magician just now. Don't look at her now soft and weak, but there is Phoenix force hidden in her body. That is one of the most terrifying energies in the entire universe, so she has such a different ability. The gifted student becomes your disciple. Ancient One Magician is not what I said, but you have made a lot of money. Lu Yan spoke and continued to talk freely. Seeing Ancient One Magician, this eased his attitude. Climb along the pole. He immediately sold his girlfriend, Chin. I want her to be a disciple of Ancient One Magician, but I have a worry about myself. And Ancient One Magician, after hearing the news, smiled faintly. She naturally knows what Chin's identity is. In fact, as early as the last time, he specially investigated the Kree invasion of the Earth. I have noticed the little red-haired girl next to Lu Yan. I also noticed the surging power fluctuations in her body. At that time, he actually had a certain degree of concern about Carol and the piano. It's just that the reason why it didn't show up was the reason for meeting these two people. It's not because of anything else. It's the follow-up, her attention here. All were attracted by Lu Yan. It's just that for all of this, he didn't explain too much to Lu Yan in front of him. After listening to what he said, he looked serious immediately, looking at Lu Yan in front of him. You just said what you are, and you are destined to become the supreme body of Sorcerer Supreme. Now you tell me that it is not you that you really want to learn magic, but your girlfriend lover. Are you playing with me on purpose? I think my ancient meaning is the kind of soft persimmon that can be handled casually by being bullied. He deliberately said and took another step forward. In an instant, Lu Yan saw the void. There are countless long whips formed by intertwining thunder and lightning. At this moment, it was attached to his limbs like tentacles. It's just a blink of an eye, it actually bound all his spiritual body. It was tightly tied up like Zongzi. Feel the anger coming from Ancient One opposite. Lu Yan frowned slightly. In fact, to be honest, at the moment, although he is in a spiritual state, Lu Yan is still able to perform the thousand-handed Buddha. Therefore, it is not impossible to break free from the shackles of Ancient One. But right now, although he can do this, he doesn't want to. Because he knew very well in his heart that this seemingly fragile bondage could be regarded as an unwritten tacit understanding between himself and Ancient One. If he breaks free right now, that is, the connection between himself and Ancient One is completely cut off and invisible. Even if they are not enemies, the relationship can only be limited to nodding acquaintances. And that kind of strange relationship is undoubtedly the biggest obstacle to Phoenix's treatment. So for Phoenix, he can only give up the idea of direct escape at the moment. Looking at Ancient One in front of him, he asked with some helplessness. So Magician, what on earth are you going to do here? Will you always keep me tied up like this? Is there something? Can't you be frank? What should I do? When Ancient One Magician heard the news, he also laughed and looked at Lu Yan. Didn't you say that your astral body has the potential to become Sorcerer Supreme? I don't want to do anything else, just want you to come into my sect to learn at this moment, and I will teach you how to do it myself. What are you talking about? You asked me and my girlfriend to worship under your door. Lu Yan's face changed instantly. I don't think that in this proposal, Ancient One contains evil intentions. He really doesn't want to go to school anymore. If this really goes to Kamar Taj to practice every day. The salted fish life that oneself dreams of, isn't it getting farther and farther away from yourself? Thinking about this, Lu Yan's expression became more and more weird. But at this moment, he raised his head, before Ancient One Magician gave a reply, but in his mind, he triggered the choice of God level again. The system prompt sounded again. Beep. Congratulations to the host for triggering the God level selection from Ancient One Magician. Quote. 1. Sorry, I have never been threatened by anyone in recording, and I am unwilling to become your student. Rejecting the invitation of Ancient One Magician categorically, leaving New York's holy place with the piano, this trip was invalidated. The choice is over, the reward a box of happy water from the fat house. 2. This is a good idea, I can think about it. Agree to the invitation from Ancient One Magician, take the piano and study with her behind. What does it mean to learn more about magic for my girlfriend? The choice is over and rewards. Wandering Magician rise, character control will increase by 10%. 3. Ha ha ha, stop teasing, I'm Lu Yan, never been a teacher by anyone and want to be my master, I'm pretty much the same as your master. Continue to fool Ancient One Magician and become his teacher. The choice is over, rewards 100 lottery tickets on the plane of the heavens. In an instant of effort, 3 options came out again in front of him. Lu Yan glanced at him very easily. His eyes fell on the third option, and the expression on his face was instantly green. I couldn't help cursing the system in my heart. What do you think, this guy is joking? Isn't this option teasing him? Even let him become the teacher of Ancient One Magician. Hee, you can't really say this, otherwise, it is estimated that Ancient One Magician will really get mad. Even if he is not hammered to death at that time, he will definitely be old and dead. With this in mind, the third option that was often chosen by him was originally. At the moment, instead, he gave it to the back of his head the first time. As for the attractive rewards given by the rear, and the lottery tickets of the plains of heaven, he didn't miss too much. Although the prizes are moving, they have to be fate. Just fool around with others, say something about the supreme physique, that's it. I really want to fool into someone else's teacher, he really doesn't have that ability. At least not now. Lu Yan thought so, and added another sentence in his heart. Following that, the idea turned into a finger and directly clicked on the second option. Decided to join the people of Ancient One Magician together to learn magic. As stated in the options, it's okay to suffer a bit for his girlfriend. Besides, learning some magic knowledge, for him, except that it is not conducive to the life of salted fish. It can also increase his control over the new character template Rise. It can also be said that it is profitable and harmless. One real great thing. Thinking like this, Lu Yan looked up again. Nodding to Ancient One Magician, she agreed with what she just said. Great goodness. Seeing that Lu Yan finally nodded, he agreed to the matter. The corner of Ancient One's mouth rose slightly, and a satisfied smile appeared. Then waved. Immediately removed all the magic vines that had imprisoned Lu Yan. The spirit body landed. Lu Yan followed, and immediately asked about Phoenix's whereabouts. He just saw Ancient One Magician with his own eyes and took Chin Gray away. He hasn't seen anyone so far, so he is naturally impatient. Ancient One Magician raised his head when he heard the news, glanced at Lu Yan, but smiled again, said. Don't worry, that little girl, I was thrown to Kamar Taj just now. Now, there is no danger to her life. 9-7, has he been thrown to Kamar Taj? Quote. Lu Yan froze, then looked up again, looking at Ancient One Magician's gaze, but it was a little weird again. Shin said, I'm afraid that you were thinking of accepting Phoenix as a disciple from the beginning, right? Co-author, just told me so much, are you telling me, old fox? Lu Yan looked suspicious. Seeing this, Ancient One Magician smiled faintly. Did not say much. Anyway, it's done now. There is no need to entangle those too much. So at this moment, he turned his head, reached out his hand, and opened a new portal directly. Originally planned to leave New York holy place with everyone. Go to Kamar Taj to discuss specific matters of apprenticeship. But I didn't expect it. Right now, I was at the point where I was about to leave. Baron Mordor, who hadn't said much just now, suddenly spoke again. They stopped everyone. Wait a minute. What's wrong, Mordu, what else do you have? Ancient One Magician asked. Baron Mordor heard the news. Then he turned his head and looked at Lu Yan next to him, with a bad look on his face, and said again. Definitely something is up. Lu Yan, have you forgotten something? Now we are all disciples of Ancient One Magician. Shouldn't the stand of the Court of Life, taken from me, be returned to me? Life's court stick. I don't know what you are talking about. Lu Yan blinked his eyes, intending to pretend to be dumb and pass the test. Needless to say, seeing his reaction, Baron Mordor naturally had a crooked nose. Then he spoke and said angrily, You want to pretend to be stupid. The artifact you snatched from me before, don't you think I just forgot? Baron Mordor said loudly. Listening to what he said, Ancient One Magician naturally turned his head to look at Lu Yan and exhorted him. Lu Yan, return that thing to him. It is his magical tool and he has already recognized him as the master. This thing is actually useless if you hold it in your hand. Every magical tool will recognize its owner. And if it is not the master it recognizes, it can't use his power, so in your hands, it is no different from scrap iron. I saw Ancient One saying so. Lu Yan also knew that at this moment, this magical artifact might not be able to keep it in all likelihood. So reluctant to stretch out his hand, he had to take down the stick hidden in his waist. It was returned to Mordu's hands. Definitely, at this moment, I still have no mercy on my mouth, and muttered softly. What to say, Mordor is really stingy. This is because the new brothers have met, and they don't give a meeting gift or anything. Baron Mordor listened and snorted again. At this time, he had made up his mind and no longer had the same knowledge of Lu Yan as a fool. Otherwise, he can be made alive by Lu Yan. What stingy is not stingy? This is an ancient artifact, can it be used for generous things? Have you seen anyone who meets friends and gives gifts directly to give out all the babies at the bottom of the box? Isn't that an idiot? Thinking about this, he even made up his mind in his heart, and then don't have any contact with Lu Yan anymore. When he went to Kamar Taj, he stayed at the holy place in New York honestly. Can't afford to provoke or hide. Out of sight, out of mind. In his heart, the wishful thinking crackled. But when he really stretched out his hand to take this stand of the Court of Life over, his face changed in an instant. Looking at Lu Yan's gaze again, it was a wonderful one. Confusion, resentment, anger, doubt, even with some panic. Quote. He squatted his mouth. It feels like being struck by lightning, and even the words are uncomfortable. And when I saw his expression, Ancient One Magician is now a stunned god. I don't understand what happened. After Lu Yan returned to his senses, he hurriedly raised his hands up toward Baron Mordor's side. He said again, Hello, your reaction is not interesting enough. I have returned everything to you. Why are you looking at me like this? Ancient One Magician frowned, vaguely aware of something wrong, and then asked again. Mordu, what is going on? Could it be that he gave you a fake artifact? Hear the question from Ancient One Magician. Baron Mordor's face only slightly returned to normal. Just still gritted his teeth, and the next words were completely squeezed out of the teeth. With horror and disbelief, he said again. It is indeed the stand of the Court of Life, but I don't know why. After taking this weapon back from Lu Yan's hands, it turned out to be a rejection of my power. Repelling your strength. Ancient One Magician was shocked. There is no time to ask questions. Then he saw the ancient artifact in the hands of Baron Mordu. His body shook, and then everyone's eyes were stunned. He took the initiative to fly back to Lu Yan's waist. Showed a feeling of nostalgia for him. This Nima. The ancient artifact turned out to betray. This thing actually recognizes Lu Yan as the master. Seeing this scene, everyone was blinded. Actually, don't talk about them. Even with Lu Yan himself, watching this scene, he felt very unbelievable in his eyes. It was totally unexpected that this will be the result this time. He just put this thing around his waist and held it for less than 10 minutes. The other party actually changed the owner. Is this supposed to say that this stick originally had a small size, or is his personal charm too great? Lu Yan thought so and took his eyes. When I returned to my mind, I vaguely guessed what happened. It is estimated that this scepter was attracted by the secret magic energy contained in his spiritual body from Runaland. That's why the owner will be changed. Therefore, the owner it really recognizes at this moment is not itself, but the wandering magician Rise. Awesome, Rise, your charm is too great. Lu Yan was speechless. I knew the ins and outs repeatedly in my heart. Instead of feeling disappointed, I became happier. After all, Rise is also his character template. After 100% control, this kind of spiritual power will be completely integrated with him. This is no different from recognizing him as the master. It was Baron Mordor, sadly reminded. Squirting, was beaten up, and lost an ancient artifact. It's a bit miserable. Thinking of this, Lu Yan raised his head and looked at Baron Mordor's gaze, with some sympathy. And Baron Mordor looked up here. Facing Lu Yan's gaze, there was a burst of gritted teeth. He is so angry. Think about it, too, whoever it is replaced by. I am afraid that he will feel angry if he is taken away from the weapon in this way. But right now, both are angry, but feel helpless. After all, at this moment, it is also the staff of the Court of Life takes the initiative to give up his master. So right now, Baron Mordo was caught in a very complete anger of incompetence. Feeling the anger of the other party at this time, Lu Yan didn't talk to him anymore. But some shrugged indifferently. Then turned his head. He followed Ancient One Magician and returned to Kamar Taj together. This has just arrived at Kamar Taj. Lu Yan felt a fragrant wind around her. With the effort of raising his eyes, I saw the side of Jichin, already threw himself in his arms, and hugged him tightly. Great, well, Lu Yan, you are finally here. Feel the will of Phoenix here. Lu Yan also has a warm current in his heart. When he returned to his senses, he stretched out his hand, stroked the back of Chin, soothed it again, and said, "It's okay, silly girl, am I standing in front of you nicely? What can happen? Well, it's okay, that bad guy in a monk's robe, didn't you do anything to you, right? This time, we will join hands. I will help you beat him together." As Phoenix said, the little pink fist in his right hand clenched. The expression on his face is also serious. But Lu Yan looked up and looked at her expression, but smiled. Laughing at the moment, he hasn't waited for him to speak yet. Behind Ancient One Magician, he coughed slightly. Looking at Phoenix again, he took the initiative and said again. "Are you going to beat me, little girl? I just wanted to be a master when I just started. It's not a good behavior." Ancient One Magician smiled Mimi and said something. I didn't feel angry because of what Phoenix just said. On the contrary, it was Phoenix, who was shocked at this moment because of what Ancient One Magician said. At this moment, After Roar made a sound of surprise. Turning his head and looking at Lu Yan's expression next to him, he became more suspicious. Obviously, there is no way to connect this weak-looking bald woman with the terrifying power that was about to turn upside down just now when she raised her hand. And seeing her look at her, Lu Yan is naturally also positive. In front of the girl Phoenix, she nodded again. Yes, this is Ancient One Magician. She was indeed the one who attacked us just now, but then, silly girl, you are the master in her mouth. To be precise, speaking of which, it is you Lu Yan and the master of Qin. Ancient One Magician Xiao Mimi added a sentence next to her. Don't give Lu Yan here at all, any chance of wanting to go wrong. Lu Yan rolled his eyes angrily when he heard the news. As for the next Phoenix, his big eyes blinked, vaguely aware that there might be something in it. But the wise she didn't speak at this time, asking why, embarrassing both sides. Just so tacitly, a few people walked to Kamar Taj, the study room of Ancient One Magician. After all, they are all magicians, and there is no red tape. The apprenticeship ceremony is also very simple. Just ask a few magicians from Kamar Taj to come over as a testimony. Lu Yan knelt on his knees, and the two of them kowtow in public with Phoenix. It's done. But right now, this apprenticeship ceremony has just ended. Lu Yan got up from the ground again. In my head, there is another reminder that belongs to the system. Beep. Congratulations to the host, for completing the selection of gods from Ancient One Magician. The selection is over, the host will be rewarded, the character template, Wandering Magician Rise, the control will increase by 10%. The host now has 18.27% control over the Wandering Magician. Because the control has exceeded 15%, Awakening Wandering Magician active skills overloaded. Overload, skill description, passive effect, Rune Prison and Spell Surge. You can reset the cooling time of the overload skill, and fill a heavy rune for a few seconds. If the rune is full, the overload will release all the runes and provide the movement speed effect. Blessing lasts a few seconds. Active effect. Release a magic explosion, causing magic damage to the first enemy hit. If the target has a surge effect, the overload will consume the effect to increase the damage and eject to nearby enemies with a surge effect body. Quote. There was another big reminder sound, which sounded in Lu Yan's mind. In the last life, Lu Yan was also a senior LoL player. Naturally, I know what the effect of Wandering Magician Rise's active skill Q is. So right now, although this skill description is a bit cumbersome, he still understood the meaning for the first time. After that, I was a little eager to try, and I wanted to find a chance to try it and see how the Rise skills of awakening I had in reality at the moment were different from those in the game. Thinking like this in my heart, when I returned to my mind, I found that Ancient One Magician, and the eyes of everyone around him, were all falling on him now. So far the scene fell into silence. Lu Yan was a little embarrassed by everyone. I touched my nose and couldn't help asking again, saying, I'm all looking at me and doing what I do, is there a flower on my face? It's not that you have flowers on your face, Lu Yan, Ancient One Magician was asking you something just now. Phoenix heard the news nearby, hurried over and added in a low voice. Explained the current situation for Lu Yan. When Lu Yan heard the news, it became clear. Totally in his absent-minded effort. These guys are wondering who to choose for him as the Enlightenment teacher of magic. Although they have worshipped Ancient One as their teacher. But Ancient One Magician, he still has to deal with the invasion of the dark side all day long. How can there be time to teach newcomers to learn magic from scratch? Therefore, the magic enlightenment work of elementary level still has to be entrusted to others. Just now Ancient One, just want to know, ask Lu Yan's opinion. I want to know who he wants to be his guide on the path of magic. This kind of thing was originally very serious, but no one would have thought that Lu Yan would be distracted at this time. It is precisely because of this. Ancient One Magician naturally felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. It feels like this brat should be given a long memory. Thinking so, after the cold snort, he didn't ask Lu Yan's opinion again, let alone give him a chance to speak. Instead, he directly decided and gave the position of Lu Yan's enlightenment teacher to Baron Mordor. As soon as I said this, everyone next to me didn't think anything. The Baron Mordor who came with him from behind, the expression on his face suddenly became wonderful. Suddenly, I felt that this was an excellent opportunity. If this matter was accepted, he would be regarded as half of Lu Yan's teacher. At that time, there is really time to toss the other party. Thinking about it, my heart was filled with joy, and I leaned over quickly, and I wanted to accept the matter. But this is just now holding a fist and hasn't spoken yet. Next to him, Lu Yan returned to his senses, already shouting loudly. No, I definitely can't let this fellow Mordu be my leading mentor. Why not? I'm the one with the best academic performance in my class. I am more than enough to be your enlightenment teacher. When Mordu heard the news, he immediately retorted. He naturally understood what Lu Yan meant. But, this duck with a mouth, how could he let the other party fly? Brat, wait and see, I must teach you a lesson. The more I think so. The expression on Baron Mordor's face became happier. Looking at Lu Yan again, he is also determined to win, and he is sure of his expression. Seeing the two people arguing, Ancient One Magician, he didn't say anything beside him. Look at her expression at this time. On the contrary, I am a little happy to see it happen. Don't get me wrong, it's not that she was upset when she saw Lu Yan and deliberately suppressed him. In other words, I just wanted to provoke a relationship between him and Baron Mordor. But as a teacher, I intend to take this opportunity to sharpen Lu Yan's temperament. What kind of temper is Lu Yan? From the perspective of Ancient One Magician, it is summed up in 4 words: soft outside and strong inside. It seems that there is a lot of salted fish, and I am not very interested in other things around. On weekdays, I am kind and talk easily. But in his bones, he was full of arrogance. This point can be seen from the previous battle between him and Baron Mordor. Baron Mordor had been beaten by him on the ground, completely unable to move. He still had to touch the weapon against the opponent. Followed by a few words mocking each other. It is really the kind of lord who would rather die than suffer. It's definitely, Ancient One magician doesn't mean that this kind of personality is necessarily bad. It's just that on the destined boring road of learning magic, she was worried that Lu Yan's character would appear too anxious and would not sink her heart. So I just need to temper my temper at the beginning. This is the same as the scene encountered by Monkey King studying in Journey to the West. In his opinion, Lu Yan belongs to this kind of monkey nature, and it must be polished for a few years in advance. Otherwise, they will teach stunts when they come up. Not only may they not be able to learn, but they are very likely to hold the seedlings to encourage them and do bad things well. Ancient One magician's heart is like a mirror. However, it is not clear right now, although my thoughts are good at the moment. But it was used in the wrong place. Just like this moment, Lu Yan did not completely succumb to the arrangements of Ancient One magician. Hearing that Baron Mordor did this, he stood up instead of his face, and said again. Don't get me wrong, Mordor, when I say this before my eyes, I am not aiming at you alone. I feel that you are not worthy of being my teacher, but that I don't need an enlightenment teacher at all and led me to magic, the way. Lu Yan, what do you mean by this? Is it possible that you are so arrogant that you feel that you are in the realm of magic and you can learn by yourself without a teacher? Mordu frowned and asked. In fact, not only was he present, but the rest of the magician frowned. Magic is sacred in their hearts and cannot be violated. They can't control the personal grievances between Lu Yan and Baron Mordor. But right now, Lu Yan's words were not only aimed at Mordu, but also desecrated the supreme magical realm in their hearts. So at this moment, everyone looked at Lu Yan's expression, and they all looked a little unsightly. Seeing that everyone's complexion is not so good. Next to Phoenix hurriedly reached out and pulled Lu Yan's sleeve. Beckon him to say a few words less. However, Lu Yan didn't seem to notice at all at this moment. At this time, he looked straight ahead, instead of closing his mouth, he just nodded. Sternly said again, it's not that I can teach myself without a teacher. I mean, I have passed the magical comprehension stage. Lu Yan seemed to be explaining. When Baron Mordor heard the news, he sneered and said again. It's just nonsense. Lu Yan, you are so self-proclaimed, it is not suitable to study in Kamar Taj at all. He said this, really got a lot of magician responses around. At this time, they all nodded their heads in deep conviction. Indeed, Kamar Taj, there is no need for such a student who has no respect for magic. I also agree with this point of view. I think the Ancient One magician can be taken back to death. We can't accept this student. Several people spoke one after another. As soon as these words came out, Phoenix's face next to him turned pale in an instant, and his heart was forgotten. Obviously he didn't want to see that Lu Yan, who had just enrolled with her, was suddenly dropped out of school within half an hour after apprenticeship. Lu Yan ding when he heard the news, and laughed again. Although from the heart, he didn't have much obsession with whether to approve the Ancient One magician. But at the moment, if he is really dropped out of school in this way, he also felt dull. So after this sneer, also simply, without any nonsense, I directly motivated Awakening's active skills from Rise Overload. Raising his hand was a wave of magical power, and he slammed it forward. The magic wave is played. That light wave fell on the bookcase in front of Baron Mordo right now. Immediately, under the gaze of everyone's stunned eyes, I heard a cracking sound. A huge bookcase that had just been placed steadily in front of Baron Mordor. At this moment, with a click, it turned into powder directly. Disappeared on the spot. How? Now you still think I was lying just now? Lu Yan spoke lightly, asked back to everyone. But right now, the field was plunged into deathly silence. No one answered at all. Some things, that's it. You say 1,000 things and 10,000, it is better to show your true ability. It was shocking. Anyway, this wave of volatility is now coming out. Those magicians who yelled to let Lu Yan drop out, they all shut up. Before, they still felt that Lu Yan had no sense of awe. When I look again now, I know that the other party really didn't lie. For him, his enlightenment mentor is really dispensable. The old magician shut up. This time, Baron Mordor is standing behind the bookcase. The expression on the face became more exciting. He was still attacking Lu Yan just now for being outspoken. Turning his head and working hard, the opponent played such a magic wave. Was so brutally slapped in the face. Naturally, there was a fiery pain on his face. But I am embarrassed. Feel the essence of magic power contained in that wave again. It was heart palpitations, because the essence of this energy is no longer weaker than yourself. But, how is this possible? It has been hundreds of years since I practiced magic to reach this level of condensation. But what about Lu Yan? How long has he been exposed to magic? Nuo Jiao, how did he do this? Is it possible that there is really any supreme body in the world? Baron Mordor felt sad for a moment. Some even started to believe Lu Yan's nonsense before. After all, there seems to be only this horrible physique that only exists in legends. It is possible to achieve this step to the end. He thought so in mind. In the back, Ancient One Magician, his eyes sharpened instantly. Compared to everyone, at this moment, he was just amazed at Lu Yan, and when he first came into contact with magic, he shot out magic waves. What she was even more amazed at the moment was the feeling behind the magic wave at this moment. That feeling, and what Ancient One Magician now recognizes, all magic elements are different. A new magical energy from an unknown place. Interesting, there really is a secret in Lu Yan. Chapter 91. Ancient One Magician's eyes flickered, and for Lu Yan, I really became more and more curious. But after a while, there was no more action. Anyway, Lu Yan has already worshipped her as a teacher. It will be a long time in the future. Naturally, she is not eager to explore for a while. The future is long. In the future, there will be time to study the spells in that unknown place. Thinking so, Ancient One Magician once again returned to its former demeanor. The before and after process is extremely short. But it was not at all without arousing the attention of others. At least this scene was seen clearly by Lu Yan next to him. Lu Yan is naturally not a stupid person. At this time, he looked at the astonishment passing by Ancient One Magician's eyes. Naturally, I guessed the other party and became interested in the mysterious runes from Runaland. But even though he knew this, Lu Yan didn't run away or was on guard, and secretly took precautions against Ancient One. After all, these things will be seen in the world sooner or later. He is not afraid, now show it to Ancient One in advance. Besides, with Ancient One's current strength, if the other party really wants to force it, he can't help it. But the other party chose this way to keep him by his side and looked at it secretly. What does this prove? It proves that the other party really has no malice towards him, and is just pure curiosity about new magic. Although Lu Yan sometimes acts and feels a bit stingy, but when it comes to speaking, he is really not a person of different voices. Otherwise, I wouldn't draw myself to the GH325 potion before, and give it to Professor X to use it. The same is true today. Although he possessed the secrets of Runeterra, he didn't intend to hide his own personalities. This is just the opposite. He was rather curious. I want to know that it is already one of the best on the earth, Ancient One of the peak combat power. If you master it again, after the mysterious magic from Runeterra, how strong will it be? Lu Yan, a playful smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. This can be regarded as a tacit understanding between him and Ancient One. Thinking like this, looking up again, it was exactly the same as what he had expected. Ancient One Magician did not ask any details about the magic missile just now. Speak again. On the contrary, an important news was announced towards everyone. That is the language side, which directly crosses the stage of enlightenment teaching. Truly became a personal disciple of Ancient One Magician. She teaches magic in person. Ah, is it a CGAD? It's really enviable. Who can say no? But when you turn your head and think about it, it seems that only the disciple who is passed down can be worthy of it. Right now, Lu Yan's ability. That's right, I agree with that. The vast majority of magicians are really rectal. They had resisted Lu Yan because they felt that Lu Yan didn't respect magic enough. But now, after seeing his real strength, everyone felt convinced. Not only did no one feel jealous, but they all spoke up and blessed Lu Yan. Seeing this, Lu Yan naturally responded with a smile to everyone. I originally thought that I was now the only disciple of Ancient One's subordinates. But when he saw Ancient One Magician, he turned his head and waved toward the room. Looking at the young man coming out of the room, Lu Yan's expression couldn't help but become weird again. He also knows this man, no one else is the big villain in the follow-up movie, Doctor Strange, the traitor disciple in Ancient One Magician's mouth Caecilius. Co-authoring this guy is his big brother. I just don't know if this buddy has been exposed to dark magic. Lu Yan thought so, and looked at Caecilius a little curiously. Caecilius didn't think much about it. After hearing that Ancient One Magician introduced Lu Yan's identity. Following forward, he took the initiative to shake hands with Lu Yan. But the attitude did not show how intimate it was. On the contrary, it seems a little arrogant. I heard that Lu Yan just came to Kamar Taj, he was able to cast magic instantly, and his attitude changed somewhat. It's just that looking at Lu Yan's expression is also mostly contested. Looking at him like this, Lu Yan opened his mouth again secretly. Shin said that this guy is really not a pleasing character. But it doesn't matter. Anyway, on this trip, he came to Kamar Taj, not to be jealous with Caecilius. The most important thing is Phoenix. Thinking so. Wait until all the magicians have retreated. On Lu Yan's side, it was the first time that he came to Ancient One Magician and reminded her. Magician, don't forget, when I was a teacher, you promised me things. His words made Caecilius a little curious next to him. As for Ancient One Magician, he lowered his head at this time and looked at Lu Yan in front of him deeply, but didn't say much. Instead, he turned around and nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'm Ancient One, I never break my promise." After speaking, Phoenix beckoned to the rear. After raising his hand to split a portal. Together with Chin Gray, I went to another alien space and started one-on-one guidance. As one of the 5 most terrifying energies in the universe, Phoenix Force is naturally extremely difficult to master. Even Ancient One personally went to the battle to guide. If you want to achieve the slightest energy, it will not escape, and there is no danger at all. It is almost impossible. So now, he will bring Ancient One Magician to another dimension. It is similar to practicing in the realm of the realm. This matter. Before Lu Yan came here, he had expected it. So right now, I am not too surprised. Going forward and exhorting Phoenix a few more words. Following the look, he returned to normal again. I just meditated in place, and began to wait quietly for the two to return. It is estimated that Wang did not say, he is indeed a person who keeps his promises extremely. After that, every Wednesday and Thursday. No matter how busy she is. Ancient One will take time to conduct separate special training for Phoenix. And this kind of special training, the effect is also impressive. Lu Yan did not go to fight Phoenix. Feel how far his magic has gone. But right now, it can be clearly felt that the aura on the opponent's body is beginning to become more and more calm. This proves that her mastery of Phoenix Force is indeed increasing. For the past half a month in a row, the Phoenix Force, which had frequently erupted before, was also rare and showed no signs of re-eruption. Even the whole person began to become more and more sunny. Even if it is Ancient One Magician, I directly point out that there is a memory storage in my mind. He didn't directly take it away. This result naturally made Lu Yan happy, and felt that this trip to Kamar Taj was really an extremely correct move. By the way, definitely. During this period of rapid progress, Phoenix is not the only one. On Lu Yan's side, although there are usually some salted fish. But I'm not too lazy. Basically, he will participate in the necessary practice homework. In this way, the speed of spiritual progress is also rapid. In less than half a month, he has reduced his control of his new character template rise from the original 18.7%. It increased to 25.6% in one breath. Although it is the next skill from awakening, there is still a long way to go. But to be honest, Lu Yan is very satisfied with the growth of his new character template. On Thursday of this day, Phoenix was taken away by Ancient One Magician, and went to study hard in the mirror dimension. When Lu Yan was free, he closed his eyes and adjusted his breath in his room. I thought that this day was the same as before, there was no difference. But never thought. I just closed my eyes, not long. Uninvited guests came again outside the door. A knock on the door sounded. He opened his eyes again and went to open the door. It was the guy Caecilius, who came out now at his door. "What's the matter, Caecilius?" Lu Yan raised his eyes and asked Caecilius. Although after half a month of contact, he also knew that this guy does not have blackened now. But for this big brother of Tsunere, to be honest, he didn't like it very much in his heart. So contact is not too much on weekdays. In this case, I naturally feel curious when I see the other party suddenly come to the door. Can't help but ask aloud. As for Lu Yan's alienated attitude at the moment, Caecilius also has feelings, but he didn't say much from Tsunere. After glanced at each other, he just opened his mouth and said lightly, I came here because I followed the teacher's instructions. Teacher, instructions, you mean Ancient One magician. Although Lu Yan has worshipped Ancient One as a teacher, she still likes to call her Ancient One magician. Caecilius frowned slightly when he heard the news, but didn't correct anything. Then he nodded and said again, yes, it is the teacher who asked me to come this time. Take you to the library. Library. Is that library with Ancient One's private collection of books? Lu Yan, who had been wary, heard the news, his eyes lit up instantly. I immediately understood what the library Caecilius was talking about at the moment. There are a lot of good things in there. Among them, the most precious is the Book of Calostro, which records the magic of the Dark World. Lu Yan coveted for a long time, actually when he came to Kamar Taj on the first day. He thought about it and wanted to go in and take a look. Take a tour, but unfortunately, he was stopped by the magician, King, stationed at the time. Have to add a quotation mark. There is only one word in this buddy movie, Wong, but if you write it together, it makes people feel like King Magician. Very embarrassing. Lu Yan had no choice but to retreat. I thought it would take a long time before I could get this opportunity. I didn't expect it to be long. The opportunity that I dreamed of, to be able to access the Book of Calostro, turned out to be so. After the excitement, when he returned to his senses, he turned to Caecilius and said again, then what are we waiting for? Go, let's start together. Go and see the library. Seeing this, Caecilius nodded slightly and said nothing more. Turn around and raise my right hand with hanging me. Then began to paint the portal. Although Caecilius at the moment, there is nothing like the black magic that I came into contact with after the movie. However, he is a master at the moment, and his magic level is still very clever. Raising his hand at this moment is almost the same as Ancient One magician. The portal was opened in an instant. Immediately after, he dragged Lu Yan into it. The two walked together. At that moment, Lu Yan only felt that the scenery beside him changed instantly, followed by the effort to raise the head again. The others had left their residence unexpectedly and appeared in an antique book building. Although it is not the first time to pass through such a portal. But now, Lu Yuan couldn't help but sigh with emotion in his heart again. I feel that during this time, I have learned the most useful spell in Kamar Taj, probably the magic of this portal. There is this ability. Lu Yan even had time to go back to the video room to watch 2 movies every day. It can be said to be extremely convenient. Nothing was delayed. Just thinking about it, the librarian, Wong, has come to them. This guy seemed to look like a dead fish face. Right now, even if Caecilius said that this trip was ordered by Ancient One magician, there was scrutiny and alert in his eyes. In front of him, the two once again reiterated the rules in the library. Caecilius nodded, listening carefully beside him. As for Lu Yan, he didn't care about it at the moment. After he finished speaking, he was the first one and rushed into the book building. In it, I began to look for traces of the Book of Cagliostro. The reason for looking for this thing is not that Lu Yan has any ambitions and wants to contact Dormammu in the Dark World. How to destroy the world's brain-dead tricks. And purely curiosity about the unknown. After all, this thing played a vital role in the following Doctor Strange movie. To be honest, he is also curious. What was said in the pages that Caecilius tore off afterwards? Originally thought, as his own disciple of Ancient One, it is very easy to read this book. But I never thought about it. At this time, he had just found the book, and he hadn't had time to open it. Wang's voice came from behind again, with seriousness, and said again towards Lu Yan. No, this is a banned book. You have no right to read it. Even if it's a direct disciple of Ancient One, can't I read it? Lu Yan asked back, a little unwilling. Seeing this, Wang did not regress. Continued, no, the borrowing of this book requires a nod from Ancient One magician himself. Wipe, you are really a dead brain. Lu Yan shook his head helplessly. He was just curious anyway. There is not much utilitarianism. Now that I heard Wang say this, I really planned to give up. But I never thought it would be at this point. In my mind, there was a prompt sound again. Yes, congratulations on activating the God level option from the Librarian King. Quote 1. Forget it, I don't watch it, can't it work? Give up borrowing the Book of Cagliostro and just leave the library. Choose to complete. Reward, good baby, title equipment, stranger friendliness plus 3-0. 2. Let's go, I'll go find GU. Go to Ancient One Magician and get her approval before borrowing this book. Choose to complete. Reward rise character proficiency increased by 10%. 3. What about scholars, can that be called stealing? Why is it so troublesome? Learn Doctor Strange, just come and steal the book at night. Choose to complete. Reward rise character proficiency, increase by 15%. Let me go, have you made a mistake? The God level selection system is activated at this time. Lu Yan watched by the side, and the whole person was also surprised. Unexpectedly, this bone eye would activate this right now. Then I lowered my head again, and I carefully examined the content of the choices given here. As usual, he glanced at the first option and then dropped it aside. And the second and third are the key points of entanglement. In terms of rewards, they are all very good options. All can be done, greatly improving the proficiency of his character template. Basically, after completing any of the options, it can be worth more than half a month of hard work. What really makes him feel tangled here is the content of the choice. Should I persuade Ancient One Magician, or just take the Book of Cagliostro and take a look? Both seem to be 000 is a feasible approach. At this moment, after serious consideration, Lu Yan decisively chose the latter. And there is no choice to convince Ancient One Magician. The reason for this is that, on the one hand, it is Lu Yan's side, and it is not sure how long it will take for Ancient One Magician to come back from the mirror dimension with Qin. As for the other aspect, the reason is simpler. To put it bluntly, he felt that it seemed like stealing a book was done. It's easier than convincing Ancient One Magician to come. And the reward is higher. Weigh the pros and cons, don't choose to steal the book at this time, isn't that true? As for the consequences, Option 3, isn't it all mentioned above? Can the matter between scholars be called stealing? Thinking like this, Lu Yan lowered his head and coughed slightly. I immediately made up my mind. He raised his head again, facing the guy Wang with a wary look on his face. He didn't say much, but grinned, showing a harmless smile. Obediently put the Book of Cagliostro in his hand back to its original position. Then, like a good baby, following behind Caecilius this guy, he started to browse the ordinary magic books honestly. After a blink of an eye, after staying for less than 3 hours, he left honestly. Throughout the process, from beginning to end, Lu Yan did not move toward the center, where the banned books were stored, and took a step closer. Seems to be a hammer in the east, and a stick in the west to browse other books. But in fact, it is Lu Yan's side that few people have noticed. Already in secret, interrogated the entire book building. After checking all the exits of the book building, or monitoring them, they were all clear. This contentedly followed Caecilius and left the library. This time leaving did not arouse anyone's idea. As for late at night, quietly, he took the sling ring. Began to engrave the portal in his room. Silently appeared again in this library. Although the library building has only 1 floor. But the footprint is huge. Wang stationed at the forefront of the bookcase. As for the banned book, the Book of Cagliostro, it is stored on the innermost shelf. On the bookshelf, there are magics of warning and defense. It looks very prosperous, but this is for Lu Yan who already possesses Rise's magic ability. It is not difficult to crack it. When he came to visit in the afternoon, he had secretly understood this forbidden curse. Raising his hand at this moment, it was a magic circle immediately pressed on the Book of Cagliostro. The ban was broken in an instant. Then pick up the book. The figure shook again and disappeared directly from the place. Has left the library. All this is slow to talk about. But in fact, the cost before and after is actually less than 2 seconds at all. He took the banned book away and returned to his room again. Then land in your own room. Even the depths of Lu Yan's own eyes flashed an unbelievable look. This time the selection of God level is too easy. There was really no accident at all, Lu Yan said, looking surprised. There is still a strong sense of unreality in my heart. But right now, after returning to God, it didn't enter the system space, so I continued to check it. On the contrary, it was the first time that I opened the book in my hand and began to read it frantically. Although he had already stolen the Book of Cagliostro for the first time. But Lu Yan knew clearly in his heart, it is impossible for him to keep this book by his side forever. According to Wang's cautious personality, within half an hour, he would patrol all the books on one side to check for missing parts. In this case, there is not much time left for him to actually record and read the book. He must rush to record the information in this book completely within this half an hour. So now, still have to seize every minute, every second. It is also a pity that smartphones have not become popular these days. Otherwise, Lu Yan would be relieved at this moment, and there is no need to do anything else. You can easily complete your work with a crazy click and photo with your smartphone. Lu Yan made a whole mouth, thinking like this in it. I just don't have time on my hands. Instead, he opened the banned book in his hand and began to flip through it. Although speaking, there are no smartphones to use. However, Lu Yan, who is strong in spirit, has reached a level that he has never forgotten. In this case, it is not difficult to record the information on the book. Basically, the 10 lines at a glance, the content you have scanned, can be remembered in mind. It is precisely because of this. In a short while, I flipped through the small part of the book. I have to say that this book really deserves the name of a banned book. What is recorded in it are the secrets of the dark world, as well as powerful spells. Looking at Lu Yan, I was dazzled. It's just a pity that there is not enough time to learn all of them. Instead, it selectively records several secret knowledge that may be effective for oneself. After turning his head, he turned the book in his hand to the middle position. Checked out, about the dark side and related information about Dormammu. I was just planning to take a look at it. But now that the book is really opened, something unexpected happened, but it happened. That is after he flipped through the relevant content at this time. The figure of Dormammu drawn on this banned book suddenly became solid. One pair, full of evil and greedy eyes, suddenly appeared in Lu Yan's mind. From a brand new magical atmosphere. Interesting. Is it a magician from Earth? A dream-like voice rang in Lu Yan's ears. It was even more horrified while making him agitate the whole person. It's a bit confusing. At this moment, I just opened the book and haven't done anything yet. How come a voice from Dormammu suddenly rang in his ears? It's not the same as in the movie. I'm not playing off this time. Lu Yan only felt his head as big as a cow in an instant. I'm worried. In the books, there is already a dark breath rushing out. At this moment, it was like a big hand, and it came straight to Lu Yan's location. Lu Yan hurriedly started thinking and put on Resurrection A. At the very moment, a cold female voice suddenly rang in my ears. I never told you, can't you just browse through banned books? That is the voice of Ancient One. When Lu Yan heard the news, his pupils shrank slightly. Shaking all over, I haven't come to say much yet. The void behind him had already split a magic door. A jade hand stuck out. It directly smashed the dark air beside Lu Yan. Then grab him again. The surrounding scenes changed again. Wait until Lu Yan reconfirms his skill. The whole human body has left the void and appeared in a completely unfamiliar world. Seeing this, Lu Yan didn't panic, knowing that this should be the mirror-dimensional world just created by Ancient One magician. Then he raised his eyes and looked forward again. Sure enough, he saw Ancient One magician sitting cross-legged in front of him at this time, his expression extremely serious. Lu Yan smiled awkwardly when he saw it, reached out and scratched his head with embarrassment. Deliberately interrupted, "Teacher, did you come back from special training so quickly?" Ancient One magician glanced at Lu Yan's hippie smile. Then he snorted coldly, not having a good air. "I won't come back, can I do it? It is estimated that in a few more minutes, Dormammu will have locked your plane coordinates. At that time, even if you have a time magic weapon on your body, you will not be able to escape the end of death." Time artifact. Ancient One magician is talking about my resurrection armor. Lu Yan was slightly surprised when he heard the news. I really didn't expect that I had the resurrection A. The biggest hole card was already known by Ancient One Magician. He raised his head again, facing the other's somewhat worried gaze. Even if he has always been a clever tongue, it is also rare this time that there is no further argument. On the contrary, he lowered his head in shame. Take the initiative to move towards Ancient One Magician and apologize. Sorry, Magician, I was a little impulsive this time. But Magician, what was going on just now? I obviously just opened the banned book and didn't actually run the summoning ritual related to Dormammu. Why? Ancient One Magician frowned. At this time, his face was filled with a blank look. At this moment, the words were only halfway through, and Ancient One Magician had already understood what he meant in front of him. At this moment, he spoke with a sneer, and said again after he had already accepted the call. Why, Dormammu will take the initiative to lock your position, and immediately shot you, right? Yes. Lu Yan nodded solemnly. Ancient One Magician looked at him with a playful expression, and said again. Didn't you always say that you are the supreme body? Don't you think that all this is related to your supreme body? 2. Supreme body. The corners of Lu Yan's mouth twitched slightly. Shin said, the title of my supreme body is all fooling people. It's not true. He didn't really say this. Just muttering silently in my heart. But it reached the ears of Ancient One Magician on the opposite side. But it made her laugh again. Look at Lu Yan, play with taste. It seems that you are still a mouse, the secret of your soul. Regardless of what you said before, whether the remarks about the supreme body are true or false, but you have this world in your body, which has never been revealed by the wave of magic, but it's true. This kind of thing, let alone the magician, is deadly temptation even for Dormammu. It is not surprising that he wants to swallow you. In fact, when I saw you for the first time, I also felt in my heart. If you want to understand your thoughts well, otherwise, you won't be the first, as if you were about to accept you as a disciple. Ancient One Magician talked freely. I am not shy about it, I am accepting Lu Yan as a disciple, his previous mental journey. And Lu Yan heard the news here. The expression on his face suddenly became complicated. Shin said, if you told me this earlier, I might not worship you as a teacher. Thinking about it again, it seems that he has been dominated by the dark plane now, and this fellow Dormammu is worried. It's unavoidable that it's getting bigger again. Frowned, and sighed again after a moment. He couldn't help but mutter again. With some puzzled way. But, this shouldn't there be a special barrier to protect against the power of the dark plane near us? Even if Dormammu noticed the abnormality of magical fluctuations on the Earth's side, just that moment. But it shouldn't be reacted like this. Quick, why, so quickly broke through the defensive array on all sides? Is it possible that he is really so strong? Upon hearing the news, Ancient One Magician on the opposite side fell into silence for an instant. So, after a long while, then he said, Dormammu's power is undoubtedly strong, but the reason why he was able to find your position so quickly is not because of this, but because of the recent period of time, I withdrew the defenses on all sides of the earth. Withdrawn the defense? Lu Yan was shocked. Suddenly thinking of something, he blurted out subconsciously. Did you start to practice dark magic secretly during this period of time? Magician. Ancient One Magician heard the words, his body was slightly. After a moment, he sighed. Look up again. At the center of the eyebrows, a dark black line suddenly appeared. There is a horrible evil spirit in that pattern, which is endless. It is the sign of black magic that has been practiced. Ancient One Magician then turned his head again. Looking at Lu Yan's gaze, there was also a deep look, and he said again. You were really smart. You guessed right. I did practice dark magic. As the light plane, Sorcerer Supreme took the initiative to come into contact with the dark plane. Clever. Does this have to do with being smart? Obviously it's me, I learned the relevant plot in advance. Lu Yan murmured silently in his heart. Looking up again, I found that Ancient One Magician's mood was somewhat depressed. Obviously, Sorcerer Supreme, as a bright camp, practiced dark magic, has always been a knot of her heart. After all, she has been teaching students on weekdays to resist everything from the dark plane. But as a teacher herself, she betrayed her own rules. So now, I can't help but feel sad. Lu Yan looked at his suffering, but couldn't help but speak, and comforted him next to him. Actively unlock Ancient One Magician, said. Magician, you don't have to be like this. Didn't you just learn a few black magic? What's so bad about this? I always think that magic is originally not good or evil, but it depends on the people who use it. Huh, do you think so? Upon hearing the news, Ancient One Magician returned to his senses, but his eyes were a little more inexplicable. Lu Yan nodded his head and said again, that is definitely, magic is originally like a knife. The same knife is a murder weapon in the hands of a murderer, but in the hands of ordinary people, it is household goods. Soldiers in front in his hands, it is a sharp blade used to defend his family and the country. The same is true for magic, black magic and white magic, aren't they all magic, if you can? Using this black magic to defeat Dormammu, who would dare to say, Ancient One Magician, you have abandoned your faith, and students. Lu Yan talked freely. At the end, Ancient One Magician raised his head, but couldn't help but laugh again. Interesting, I didn't expect that after so many years I have lived in Ancient One, I might not be as open as a student. Ancient One Magician laughed. After saying this, the conversation suddenly changed again. Looking in front of Lu Yan, his eyes burned again. However, to defeat Dormammu and repel its ambition to invade the Earth, it is not enough to just learn a few dark magics. Maybe it is true that I sacrificed my whole body and mind to the plane of darkness. Lu Yan, do you think I should do this? Ancient One Magician spoke and asked again. This is indeed a dilemma. However, when Lu Yan heard the words here, he blinked his eyes again. I thought of the plot in the movie afterwards. Said with some temptation. Actually, if you didn't intend to kill Dormammu, but just force the opponent back, it shouldn't be so troublesome. Oh, do you have a solution to this? I heard Lu Yan say so. On the Ancient One Magician side, naturally, interest came again. He looked at Lu Yan curiously. Lu Yan was a little frustrated by her gaze. After lowering his head and clearing his cough twice. Immediately after speaking again, he immediately explained how Doctor Strange finally dealt with Dormammu in his own memory. This method, it seems to be relatively tall. In fact, to put it bluntly, it is the hooligan style of play. Knowing that you can't beat Dormammu, then simply stop playing. Take advantage of the drawbacks of the mirror dimension, and the ability of Time Gem to revive unlimited times. Annoying Dormammu on the opposite side abruptly. Nothing else is to bet that it will not dare to be trapped in the small world of the mirror dimension with itself, endlessly reincarnation forever. He uttered the words. The Ancient One Magician, who was full of expectation on the other side, also smiled immediately. To tell the truth, it's the fact that Lu Yan didn't count it, and he would give such an idea. When I heard what he said, the first feeling in my heart was naturally that this method was extremely unreliable. But turn around and think about it. The eyes are getting brighter and brighter, let alone I really think this is a feasible way. Nodded slightly, and then it was interesting to say again. Looking at Lu Yan, with something strange, he said again. Lu Yan, your thoughts are wild and unconstrained, unlike ordinary people. Where is it? It's too good, magician. Lu Yan laughed and waved his hands. I wanted to take this opportunity to praise myself again. However, Ancient One Magician spoke next, a word, but he fell into silence again. So Lu Yan, are you willing to help me deal with Dormammu together? Me, deal with Dormammu? Lu Yan was startled. Once again, looking at Ancient One Magician, the expression became exciting in an instant. Although he is full of confidence in his own strength. But these years, self-confidence is not arrogant. Lu Yan is also very clear that his current level is very reluctant to deal with Dormammu from Ancient One Magician. How big a gap is there? Right now, Ancient One Magician even asked him to come and help. What can he help? Be a mascot next to him. When the two sides are fighting, do you call 666? Isn't it, dignified sorcerer supreme, and this kind of hobby, advocating, the bright people don't pretend to be dark, forced. If this is the case, then there is no need to hold me by the side. If I learn from Apocalypse, can I directly broadcast a TV live broadcast directly to the world? Lu Yan was puzzled. After regaining consciousness, he cleared his cough twice, and also tactfully refused. Magician, you guys, it's just a fight with gods. It's not appropriate for me, the little shrimp, to participate in it, right? Lu Yan looked embarrassed, and listened to him, claiming to be an irrelevant little shrimp. Ancient One Magician, who had a calm look just now, had an expression on his face, but it became serious again in an instant. Looking in front of Lu Yan, he said in a solemn voice. How can you be irrelevant? Don't you understand until now, Lu Yan, the plan you just mentioned? You are the most critical link. Me, the most critical link. Lu Yan was shocked, as if he was a little confused by what Ancient One Magician said. Seeing this, Ancient One Magician opened his mouth and explained to the side. Definitely is the most critical link. Although the plan you just set up is good, it has a prerequisite. That is to say, it is necessary for the opponent to take the initiative to attack. I have fought with Dormammu so many times before. You can say that I have used any means. This time, do you think that Dormammu, knowing that I am fighting against him, will take the initiative to come over and fight me? Quote. Ancient One Magician asked rhetorically. Lu Yan heard this. Only then did I really understand the meaning of Ancient One Magician. The battle of feelings is not to make him a mascot, but to use him as a bait. To trap Dormammu. I wipe it, wouldn't I be more dangerous? Lu Yan thought so. The expression on the face also became exciting in an instant. Ancient One Magician saw Lu Yan's concerns and quickly added. Lu Yan, I know this matter. It is very dangerous for you, but it is really necessary for you. Only you, with a special magical spirit body, can make Dormammu become greedy. As Ancient One Magician said, his face was also pleading. She was really moved by Lu Yan's thoughts just now. At this moment, it was a move to completely remove Dormammu's mind. Seeing this, Lu Yan sighed slightly in his heart. It's really bad, right now, is it a stone that hits him in the foot? Looking down as to fall into contemplation once again, and begin to weigh the pros and cons. However, what he didn't expect was that he just lowered his head right now. The voice of God-level choice rang in his mind again. Ding! The conditions are met. Congratulations to the host for activating the God-level choice from Dormammu. 1. What are you kidding about? Where is life important in saving the world? Rejected the conditions on Ancient One Magician, and resolutely disagreed with taking personal risks to deal with the Dark Lord Dormammu. Complete the choice. Reward Wonder Woman's underwear set. 2. Let's do it. It's hard to be kind. For the long time you taught me, I promise to help you. He agreed to the conditions of Ancient One Magician and agreed to be her bait to help seduce the Dark Lord Dormammu to the bait. Complete the selection and reward 10 lottery tickets on the plane of the heavens. 3. As a superhero, you have to be enlightened, save the world or something, definitely should be done independently. Otherwise, how can it be called the pinnacle of Kobe? Where do you need Ancient One Magician's help for such a small thing? Rejected the invitation from Ancient One Magician, and took the matter completely on himself, determined to face it alone, the Dark Lord Dormammu. Complete the selection and reward 50 lottery tickets on the plane of the heavens. I'm going, really or not? How long has the last God-level choice passed? If this immediately activates the second one. Lu Yan looked into his head. Suddenly a new God-level choice appeared, and the whole person was naturally surprised. Then he lowered his head and looked at the content of the 3 options. His complexion became even more exciting in an instant. Needless to say, according to the usual practice, the first option was again excluded by him. As for the second one, and the third one, the prize of 50 lottery tickets on the plains of the heavens, although attractive, it is still destined to win. Although Lu Yan opened Goldfinger, he also knows the follow-up plot of Doctor Strange. But to be honest, he really didn't think he had any protagonist aura, able to solo Dormammu undefeated one-on-one. So after hesitation again and again, he still focused on option 2, and felt that it was a good idea to join forces with Ancient One Magician at this moment. In this way, you can deal with Dormammu and get the reward of choice. It can be regarded as a thank you to Ancient One Magician, who has worked so hard to teach Phoenix's kindness. Relationship debt or something is trouble. Lu Yan thought, lowered his head and muttered. The finger has fallen on the choice. I agree to this option. Then he looked up, and so did Ancient One Magician. Great, well, Lu Yan, just agree with you. The Ancient One Magician, who was originally ambitious, heard Lu Yan say this now, and his face naturally overflowed with joy. After speaking, he also made a promise. Don't worry, I will not treat you badly after this incident, and I will definitely give you a great opportunity. The great opportunity that Ancient One Magician has said is certainly not a small one. But at the moment, Lu Yan didn't expect too much. Just waved his hand to indicate that it doesn't have to be the case. Then he turned the topic on the right track again, and asked about Ancient One Magician, what his specific plan was next. He also cooperated here, and Ancient One Magician continued to act. And when Ancient One Magician heard the news, it was an atmospheric wave, and said again, "Nothing needs to be prepared, just wait there and wait for my instructions. Let me take care of the rest. Don't worry, at most 3 days. If things go well, we can get rid of Dormammu once and for all. Violation of the Earth. If this is successful, Lu Yan, you will be the biggest contributor to these 1,000 things." Ancient One Magician's eyes gleamed, and he felt excited as he said this. Lu Yan was not so excited. After hearing this, it will take 3 days to see the difference. Grumbling his eyes, he thought of Phoenix again. I want to take advantage of this time to recount and chat with her. Naturally, Ancient One Magician cannot refuse this request. After raising their hands, they opened the portal again, and the two of them left the separate dimensional space, looking for the piano. After meeting with Jin again, Lu Yan uses his mental power to feel the Phoenix force that the opponent has become increasingly stable. On his face, he couldn't help showing a somewhat relieved look. But at the moment hesitation again and again. However, he still didn't explain the conspiracy between his side and Ancient One Magician to deal with Dormammu. For the first time in my life, I felt that sense of urgency. After all, it is the Dark Lord Dormammu, but not weaker than the powerful enemy of Thanos. Even if he teamed up with Ancient One Magician, Lu Yan said in his heart, it was a state of mind. I even worried about whether I would go forever. It is precisely because of this concern that he did not really say this. After returning to his room, he checked the personal system panel for the first time. The proficiency reward for stealing, the Book of Cagliostro, was finally successfully distributed. His rise, the proficiency of this single hero template successfully increased by 15%. So far, the overall proficiency has increased to 33.27%. Although this level of proficiency has increased, there is no way to awakening the next active skill. But it has deepened Lu Yan's perception of the runes of the mysterious land. Makes his use of magic and related secret arts more handy. At this stage, the war with Dormammu is imminent, no one will dislike his life-saving means too much. Even if there is only a small increase. God knows, what effect will it have in the final battle. So the more at this time, Lu Yan actually dared not relax from the bottom of his heart. Although what I said before with Ancient One Magician is that there must be a time alone with the Chin side quietly. But in fact, in addition to the homework that the couple must do every night, Lu Yan is basically busy spinning around like a top. Compared with the practice in normal days, it takes too much hard work. In this way, after raising your own new hero template, personal proficiency to 35%. This afternoon, Ancient One Magician, who had disappeared for many days, finally appeared in front of him again. Lu Yan has never seen such a solemn Ancient One. Not only did she wear the eyes of Agamotto, she also put the floating cloak that she was going to pass to Doctor Strange on her body. It can be said that it is really armed to the teeth. And now it appears this time. CGAE, also no nonsense, but straight to the point, and said to him again. It's all ready, let's go, Lu Yan. Saying beckoning, a portal has been opened instantly. Lu Yan turned his head and glanced at Phoenix, who was sleeping on the couch. Nodded slightly, and said nothing more. Instead, he just walked to Ancient One Magician's side. Follow her into this portal. In the blink of an eye, the surrounding environment changes suddenly. I heard a series of violent winds suddenly sounded in my ears. Roar howls of cold wind. Lifting his eyes again, looking around, Lu Yan's eyes flashed with a touch of astonishment. Yes, Lu Yan really didn't expect that Ancient One would bring him to the snowy mountains in the Himalayas right now. Shall we summon Dormammu right here? Yes, right here. This inaccessible, evil force on the dark plane, even if my side is not controlled in time and escapes, it will not hurt the innocent. Ancient One spoke lightly. Speaking of this, it can be said that it has been fully considered. After hearing the news, Lu Yan naturally nodded without any objection. Together with Ji Yu, walked to the top of the Himalayas. Wait until the top of the mountain, after you really stand. Only then found out. There is even a half-person altar above the top. The altar is newly built. Go over and take a closer look. Lu Yan even saw the familiar patterns drawn on the altar. Nothing else, it is exactly what the banned book said before about the summoning ceremony of the Dark Lord Dormammu. You really have everything ready. Definitely, what you have to do next is to drop your blood on it, and use your magic wholeheartedly to summon Dormammu to come to the world, and that's it. At this stage, I will not appear, I will always be hidden in the mirror dimension, watching you silently. Ancient One Magician spoke and explained to Lu Yan. Speaking of this, it seems that Lu Yan is starting to worry again. I couldn't help but asked again, how about it, Lu Yan, are you okay now? Lu Yan laughed again when he heard the news. Turning to look at Ancient One next to him, he asked, what can be the problem? Don't run away without problems, just leave me alone here. Don't worry, this will definitely not happen. Next I will wait for your good news. Quote. Ancient One laughed. Immediately after, raised his hand and pointed forward, accompanied by the sound of shattering glazed tiles. Directly once again created a mirror dimensional space and hid in it. And as the Ancient One side was hidden, Lu Yan spoke a long voice, his expression gradually becoming solemn, looking at the magnificent summoning altar on the ground. Waved very decisively. It was also a drop of blood, dripping on it. I just started my own summoning ceremony. Although knowing this step is the only way. But now that it is really showing off, Lu Yan's big deal has gone beyond a touch of absurdity. Who can think of what the big villain in Doctor Strange will do? He actually did this in advance. And under the encouragement of Ancient One Magician, he took the initiative to do this. I just don't know if it really succeeds this time. Will Doctor Strange become Sorcerer Supreme in the future? After all, this version of my own seems to be regarded as Sorcerer Supreme's greatest achievement, and it has been obliterated. Lu Yan thought to himself. His thoughts were a little messy for a while. Fortunately, this messy thoughts did not last long. Because as he cut his palm on this side, he began to call for a short time. The Tiangong above the sky has already begun to change. Deep in the originally blue sky, a dark gap suddenly appeared. With the appearance of the crack, the breath of the entire Himalayas began to become more and more weird. The wind is violent, and the clouds are overwhelming. Groups of thunder and lightning are intertwined. With this weird behavior, the black crack began to grow bigger and bigger. With the expansion of the gap, an unprecedented brand new world just appeared in front of Lu Yan. Although in previous movies, Lu Yan had seen everything in this world. But now, when I really see the real thing, Lu Yan still couldn't help feeling that the Hollywood filmmakers' imagination for the multiverse is still too limited. The real world is much broader than what they show in the movie. As the dark gap grew wider and wider, one after another colorful balls of light appeared in front of Lu Yan. It looks like a ball of light to outsiders, but from Lu Yan's point of view, he will look closer to the past. You will find that every light ball contains a universe. This feeling is so strange that Lu Yan couldn't help but think of the phrase from the Buddhist school that I read before, flower one world, one leaf one Bodhi. He hadn't had a deep understanding of this sentence before. Seeing this scene at the moment, I feel deeply impressed. But right now, he didn't dare to be in this kind of emotion. How long he was silent. After all, on my own side, I am not here to visit the mountains and water, and to visit the multi-universe. It's for Dormammu. Thinking, he looked up again, his expression also became solemn, and he looked at the situation on the dark crevice with caution. Time passed by bit. 5 minutes later, he hadn't seen Dormammu's person yet. I heard a sneer first, which came from behind the multi-universe. Interesting, I thought that on Earth, who was calling me to come from Roar, I didn't expect it to be you. The sound echoed in the Himalayas. Immediately afterwards, Lu Yan saw a pair of eyeballs with his own file size. It came out from behind the dark gap. A giant with an invisible face stood up. In the depths of the dark plain, looking down at him, it was like looking at a moth ant. Although Lu Yan saw each other for the first time. But right now, I felt the dying air surging out of this giant, which seemed to be able to destroy everything. He guessed the identity of this giant in an instant. Yes, this guy is not someone else, it is the true lord of the dark world. They are looking for Dormammu. Lu Yan looked up at this moment and looked at Dormammu. Dormammu is also looking at him. I felt once again that what came out of Lu Yan was after the rune fluctuations from the mysterious land. Dormammu's eyes were uncontrollable, and there was a look of greed again. Looking at Lu Yan, he said again with temptation in his words. Humble human beings, since you call me here, you are asking me. Sacrifice everything you have to me. It can meet all your requirements, and even bring you a truly eternal life that this world has never had before. As long as you devote everything to me. Believe me, you can gain more than you lose. Dormammu's words were full of confusion and condescending. Obviously, Lu Yan is regarded as the one he has encountered in other multi-universes, the kind of profit-seeking generation. Thinking that when he said it in a few words at this moment, Lu Yan would kneel down obediently and bow to him. Only this time, Dormammu miscalculated the situation. He said this now. Lu Yan not only didn't kneel down. On the contrary, there was a sneer from the corner of his mouth, looking at him with contempt, and said again. Can meet all my requirements. Then I want you to judge yourself, can you? As long as you can meet my requirements, I will tell you immediately, everything you want to know. Anyway, Ancient One is hiding beside him. Although Lu Yan was afraid of Dormammu, he didn't show much fear in words. He has a playful look here. As for the opposite Dormammu, he was instantly angry when he heard the news. Human, what do you mean? Do you deliberately tease me? Call me back and want me? Do you think the tyrants of the dark world can be manipulated at will? Dormammu stared, as if flames spurted from his eyes. The sound was like thunder, spreading everywhere. Obviously, no power was used, but only the voice was transmitted. It was also near the Himalayas, causing a large avalanche. Large tracts of snowflakes collapsed silently. At that moment, there was really a deterrent to destroy the world. Putting pressure on Lu Yan. Lu Yan looked shocked. Fortunately, Ancient One magician, hiding in the dark, finally took a step and rushed out directly. At this moment, he raised his hand slightly. It was actually a direct use of Eye of Agamotto's ability. This restored the avalanche that had just occurred on a large scale. Looking at this scene, Lu Yan was naturally overjoyed. As for Dormammu, who came from outside the darkness. However, his eyes suddenly shrank, and he looked at Ancient One again. In addition to the jealousy in his eyes, there was also the anger of the enemy meeting. After gritting his teeth, he said again, I said who dared to be so bold and teasing the deity, it turned out to be you, old nun. Do you want to die? Ancient One, the deity did not take the initiative to invade the earth. It has already given you a lot of face. You dare to take the initiative to provoke. I really thought that Dormammu was afraid that you would not succeed. Believe it or not, today, in front of you, ruin the universe where the earth is. Dormammu raged. But when the opposite Ancient One magician saw this, he squeezed the technique secretly, and the smile on the corner of his mouth became more and more interesting. You can come and try it. I am calling you to come over now. I came here to end the Phoenix wish between us. If you are wise, you should never set foot on the earth, otherwise, what you will meet next is a nightmare. You presumptuous. Dormammu was naturally upset when he heard this. Yelling at a colleague. There was already a spear condensed from the dark elements, lacing towards the two Lu Yan. Lu Yan naturally knew that he could not participate in this kind of fairy fighting behavior. Honestly used the fruitful ability. Quickly retreated to the side. Only the Ancient One side raised his hand, and a random magic circle could block all those spears. Facing the angry Dormammu at this moment, the smile became more and more interesting. Then he deliberately stimulated the other party, and said again. At this level, I want to invade the earth, but it's not enough. Do you dare to arouse me? Dormammu is not an idiot, and naturally knows that Ancient One is deliberately irritating him at this time. But knowing that knowing, at this time, my heart still inevitably fell into a frenzy. Okay, Ancient One, this is your own death, you can't blame me. In Dormammu's eyes, murderous intent appeared. Although he was afraid of Ancient One, he was really not too afraid to fight her. Therefore, speaking right now, and then opening his mouth, is directly hitting a horrible beam of energy towards the top of the Himalayas. Smashed down hard. Boom. The beam of light fell. This power is even more terrifying than a nuclear bomb. At that moment, Lu Yan only saw the dazzling golden light rushing out of the field. The surging dark energy surged in the field. Not only was he standing aside and fully guarded, he swept away directly. 000, even blasted most of the hilltops of the Himalayas. Ancient One's figure was directly buried under the clod of earth by the broken rocks. It seemed that at this moment, just withstand one move, and completely lost the battle ability. Seeing this scene, Dormammu was naturally overjoyed. But immediately after, frowned, and suddenly felt something was wrong. It's not for other reasons, but I think it's too simple to win. Just one move can kill Gu in seconds. If this is the case, it is absolutely impossible for Ancient One to sit in this Sorcerer Supreme position for so many years. Not quite right. There is fraud. There is definitely a fraud. Brat, what the hell are you guys playing? Dormammu was flustered inexplicably. Turning his head, his eyes are like electricity. The coercion, like a mountain like a sea, instantly pressed on Lu Yan's body. Lu Yan gritted his teeth and didn't talk nonsense when he saw this. Unleash the ultimate move, Thousand-Handed Buddha, directly. Behind him, the phantom Thousand-Handed Bodhisattva surged out. He slammed directly in the direction of Dormammu. He will delay time and wait for Ancient One to resurrect. Although the power of the attack looks terrifying. It's just a pity that with an attack of this level, it is extremely difficult to really hurt Dormammu. For a Dark Lord who destroyed the multiverse, his understanding of space magic is naturally impossible to match Lu Yan. So at this moment, raise your hand again. It turned out that Lu Yan's offensive didn't even get close to him, so it disappeared. A ridiculous trick. Dormammu chuckles even more. Turning his head and looking at Lu Yan, he said with a cold light in his eyes. Say, what the hell are you and Gu playing? Otherwise, you will be the next one to die. Dormammu said. The space around him surged wildly. The dark matter is like a steel knife, floating around Lu Yan. This feeling is really terrifying to the extreme. It seems that if you are careless, you will be directly beaten up. Lu Yan felt this scene, and the cold sweat on his forehead also poured out in an instant. Fortunately, it was at this critical moment. The voice of Ancient One Magician appeared in the field again. Dormammu, what kind of ability to bully a half-year-old child? Your opponent is me. Quote. The voice fell to the ground. Dormammu naturally stopped immediately, turning his head again, looking behind him. I saw the Himalayas that had just been blown up by him, and he started to slowly return to the original state. Ancient One Magician, with his hands on his back, is still standing on the top of the mountain. At this moment, his whole body is unscathed, and it looks no different from before. The eye of Agamotto hanging on the neck is shining slightly. Time magic, it's done. Seeing this, Lu Yan's heart that had been hanging all the time finally fell back into his stomach completely. As for Dormammu next to him, his brows tightened instantly. She spoke again, looking embarrassed, and said again towards Ancient One Magician. It's impossible. I just slapped you to death on the spot with my own hands. How could you be able to come back from the dead and reverse everything? Is it possible that everything just now is an illusion? Illusion? No, it's not. This is time prison. Ancient One Magician opened his mouth and said lightly. It broke the name she gave to this spell. What shit time is in prison? It can't trap me. Dormammu was furious. In fact, at this time, he had vaguely guessed something in his heart. It's just that at the moment, I don't want to admit it. Said so. He stretched out his hand directly, and slapped it at the Ancient One Magician again with a slap. This time, Ancient One Magician stood in place and even emptied all his defenses completely. Let the opponent kill yourself. Dormammu dropped his big hand. Just listen to Pist. The entire flesh and blood of Ancient One Magician shattered, dissipating between heaven and earth. Even the soul was completely swallowed by darkness. Dormammu was panting. After he had swallowed the soul of Ancient One Magician at this moment, he was finally sure of it, and there would be no other changes. But the next moment, the smiling face of Ancient One Magician, but still striding forward, reappeared on the top of the Himalayas. What the hell is it? Didn't I tell you just now, time prison, in this small world that I customized for you, time will reincarnate indefinitely. No matter how many times you kill me, the ending will be the next one. The beginning of reincarnation. Ancient One magician began to explain. Are you crazy? Dormammu was shocked when he heard that. At this moment, looking at Ancient One magician's gaze again, there was both shock and confusion. If you do this, you will plunge yourself into endless pain. You will experience endless reincarnation here. It doesn't matter, as long as you don't swear that you will live forever and never invade the Earth dimension again, I will drag you into reincarnation forever. The corner of Ancient One magician's mouth still has a smile. When Dormammu heard the news, he was completely crazy. Raising his head and roaring again, said, Asshole, you asshole. I don't want to be trapped in this time cage forever with you. There is nothing that can trap me. I am the Lord of Darkness. Mom. Dormammu raised his head and shouted again. The voice pierced the clouds. A wave of light was fired again, destroying Ancient One magician. This blow even penetrated most of the earth. Liu Yan vaguely saw the fire surging. But a pity, basically this side, he just wiped out Ancient One's body. In the next instant, there was the new Ancient One, which appeared on the top of the Himalayas. The scene of world extinction just now disappeared again. Everything starts from the beginning. The two are really caught in a closed time loop. So back and forth. As for Liu Yan, he was in a third-party position on the court at this time, watching silently the development of things in the field. At this moment, Dormammu, after experiencing many reincarnations, has already begun to believe the words of Ancient One magician in his heart. On the one hand, he was angry at Ancient One magician, his calculations. As for the other side, they are afraid of being really trapped in this small world forever. Truly fall into an endless cycle, and cannot escape. The inner emotions can be said to be caught in a struggle of extreme contradictions. And this struggle, in the cycle of time, after hundreds of times, finally softened completely. The anger that had originally enveloped Dormammu's heart was finally completely taken over by the panic. Otherwise, the more powerful the person, the more afraid of death. It is naturally impossible for Dormammu to escape this law. What's more, what he has to face right now is not just death. It is endless reincarnation. In his opinion, this is simply a torture that is 100 times more cruel than death. It is precisely because of the torture of this kind of punishment at this moment. As a result, Dormammu finally gave up the idea that he, an Ancient One magician, would be consuming it hard, and chose to serve soft. After experiencing the resurrection, I don't know how many times. Right now he finally stopped his injured attack. After looking at Ancient One magician in front of him, he gritted his teeth and said again, Woman, you won. I, Dormammu, agreed to your request, okay. Let me go, I promise to live forever and never invade the earth. Dormammu spoke with hatred, but at this moment, let alone Liu Yan when he said this, he was secretly relieved even with Ancient One magician in his heart. Obviously, these hundreds of thousands of reincarnations of life and death have caused her torment very seriously. But at the moment, Ancient One magician didn't lose his temper, and he was too busy to agree to Dormammu. Hearing him say so now, he grinned and grinned again, said, Dormammu, you just commented on me like this, it's useless, who knows if you will turn back again. I want you to use your power to spread the voice of every corner of the dark universe towards your servants, announce your decision. You guy. Dormammu's face stiffened slightly when he heard the words. In fact, there was a real fluke in my heart just now. But now, what Ancient One magician said obviously blocked his final escape. As the Lord of the Dark World, he was completely eloquent there. In order to maintain one's own rule, it is absolutely impossible to make such a thing. Otherwise, it is the greatest damage to one's own authority. These words of Ancient One magician can be regarded as grabbing Dormammu's lifeblood. Dormammu cursed inwardly. I really want to tear the smiling bald woman in front of me to pieces. But reason told him at this time, I had to give up this decision. People under the eaves have to bow their heads. In the end, Dormammu, who felt humiliated, still followed Dormammu's orders. He spread his voice to every corner of the dark world. Seeing that Dormammu is really like this, after obediently doing it on Ancient One magician, this is really a long sigh of relief. At this moment, naturally chose to keep the promise. Interlaced his hands in front of him and patted slightly. Click on it, accompanied by a flash of light. The eye of Agamotto, who was told to keep spinning, finally stopped slowly. Lu Yan was beside him, and he didn't feel any difference. But at this moment, I also know. That daunting time loop was finally broken. Dormammu looked up aside, then looked at the heavenly palace that has begun to slowly close on top. The bottom of his eyes also showed the feeling of the rest of his life. At this moment, he lowered his head again and looked at the eyes of Gamoto on Ancient One Magician's chest. In an instant, I understood the depths of this thing and what it was hiding. In an instant, the expression on the face also became wonderful. With some coldness, he said again, "It turns out that one of the 6 infinite gems in the universe is actually in the hands of your Ancient One. AAA, the eyes of Agamotto, the disguise is pretty good. Ancient One, today, the deity is not in your hand. Above, to be precise, it is under the mysterious power of Time Gem." For Dormammu, he directly points out the true identity of Agamotto I. Ancient One didn't panic either, but laughed again, with a relaxed expression. "What's the difference? If you lose, Dormammu. Why, don't you still want to break the promise you just made?" As Ancient One said, on his arms, a series of mysterious runes lighted up in an instant. The time gem that she hung on her neck began to shine again. This is obviously a shock to Dormammu. Seeing this, Dormammu's pupils suddenly shrank. Then he snorted and said again, "Don't worry, my deity is not the kind of villain who doesn't believe in words. I will naturally abide by the agreement. But Ancient One, you really offended me this time. Be careful, the deity will not set foot on the earth in the future, but don't let me catch you and then enter the dark plane to draw energy, otherwise, it will cost you." Dormammu seemed to feel that he was coming violently at this moment, but in the end he left in embarrassment, his face blank. So right now, before leaving, he is still talking ruthlessly. I want to save some face for myself. It's just that these words fell in Ancient One's ears, but they didn't have any deterrent effect. The reason why Ancient One Magician absorbs the energy of the dark world, in fact, is to resist the invasion of the Dormammu gang. Now that Dormammu has promised to live forever and never set foot on the earth, she will no longer draw the energy of black magic in the future. Naturally, I will not regret it. Go, never come back. Thinking like this, she raised her head again, looked at the back of Dormammu's side, and said so. I thought that with the closure of this dark crack, the earth will usher in a new era without the threat of Dormammu. But at this moment, it was totally unexpected. It was the moment when this dark gap was about to be completely closed. From the depths of this crack, brush it. Suddenly, another black whip made of dark matter condensed came out. At this time, it is like with tentacles, and like a big hand. It was wrapped around Lu Yan's figure in an instant. There is no time for anyone to react at this moment. Dormammu jerked from behind. Give it a stab. The void is broken. It actually pulled Lu Yan into the space of the dark plane. Oops, Dormammu, what on earth do you want to do? The originally delightful Ancient One Magician saw this natural color change. Hurriedly set off and chased forward. Want to stop Dormammu's behavior. As for Dormammu himself, when he heard Ancient One Magician's roar, he raised his head and laughed again. With some disdain, Ancient One, I only promise that you won't set foot on the earth again in the future, but I didn't promise you. When I leave this time, I don't take anything else to leave. This little doll is good, it belongs to me. Dormammu laughed loudly. The long whip shook, and instantly grabbed Lu Yan's body in his hand. You let me go. Lu Yan himself was naturally scared to death. It is no exaggeration to say that this is really the most difficult crisis he has encountered so far. There is no hesitation. Thousand-handed Buddha skills, once again. In an instant, countless magical artifacts poured out of Lu Yan's body. He slapped Dormammu's right hand fiercely, bombing wildly. Under the life and death crisis, Lu Yan's side was completely crazy. A series of attacks came down. Dormammu's right hand was also constantly bursting. But even so, Lu Yan is still unable to break free from Dormammu's defense. Moreover, when this set of attacks was defeated, Dormammu lowered his head and looked at Lu Yan's gaze, but there was no anger. Yes, it's just joking. It felt like a Tathagata Buddha, looking at the Monkey King who was constantly churning in the palm of his hand. No matter how to churn, He also knew that the opponent would not be able to break through the five-finger mountain in his hand after all. For this feeling, Lu Yan's heart naturally filled with deep helplessness. As for Dormammu in front of him, he lowered his head at the moment, but his mouth raised a happy smile. Cool. Just being trapped by Ancient One and locked in the mirror dimension space, the pain caused by infinite reincarnation. It seems to be eliminated a lot and invisible. He lowered his head and pointed at Lu Yan, even more viciously. Angry, powerless, kid. Let you help the old nun of Ancient One to make a shot together. Today is when you have to pay the price. Shut up, Dormammu, let him go. Seeing this, Lu Yan did not speak. Behind him, Ancient One has torn the space and rushed into the dark dimension again. At this time, the sword eyebrows were erect, and it was obviously anger that was extremely extreme. Both hands are knotted. I plan to use the energy of Time Gem again to reverse everything. But Dormammu, who had escaped into the dark dimension, waved and interrupted directly. Ancient One snorted, and the spell was forcibly interrupted. Dormammu sneered and said again, Ancient One, don't think that you are holding infinite gems in your hand, and you will eat others. It was just the deity's carelessness before it fell into your trap. Otherwise, do you think the deity will be so easy to catch it? Dormammu shouted. When speaking, the figure draws energy from the dark dimension again. The tall and majestic body originally rose again at this moment, now accompanied by a roar. Behind him, in the dark galaxy that was connected like a ring, there was a big star directly shattered. Boom! There was a loud noise. The power of terror is like a violent wind and tsunami. He directly rushed to Ancient One to save people, and forced him to take a half-step back. Although only half a step. But this half-step effort is enough for Dormammu to kill the killer. Old nun, my deity, always keep saying everything. Don't worry, I said that I will never set foot on the earth again. This is what counts. However, I also said that if you step into the dark plane again, it will cost you a terrible price. These words also count. Dormammu sneered ferociously. Finish saying this. His right hand clenched fiercely. It actually squeezed Lu Yan's body directly in front of Ancient One Magician. Do not, Ancient One exclaimed, the face that was originally like an iceberg finally filled with anger. Dormammu raised his head and laughed wildly. Happy. This is what he wants to see. This is what he thought of after countless reincarnations in the mirror dimension. Means of revenge for Ancient One Magician. Thinking about this, he followed up, thinking about a few words about Ancient One Magician. Pulled her into the darkness dimension completely, and killed the matter directly. But right now, I didn't expect it. It's on this juncture. The position of his right palm suddenly sent a strange wave. With resurrection a passive activation. Lu Yan, who had just died, appeared in front of him again. How is this possible? I have obviously interrupted Ancient One's spell casting, so why can you be able to resurrect again? Dormammu's eyes widened. It was also at this time that I began to really pay attention to the weak earthling in front of him. And listening to him say so. Lu Yan's heart was naturally an angry knot. But at this moment, in front of Dormammu, it is naturally impossible to tell him the truth. Said that I am resurrected now because of the effect of the resurrection armor. And so on. Instead, he snorted coldly, spoke again, and flickered. Idiot, I didn't expect it, I also have a magic weapon of time. The young master can be resurrected infinitely. Today you are dead, you rubbish. Lu Yan gave a mouthful. The intention was to fool Dormammu's side and talk to him a few more words. Extend the time so as to wait for the follow-up rescue from Ancient One Magician. But right now, Dormammu didn't seem to have much thoughts of communicating with him at all. Hearing the news at this moment, not only did not panic. Instead, he snorted again and said again, infinite resurrection. Well, if you resurrect once, the deity will kill you once. I want to see, how long can you hold this time magic weapon with you? You dare, opposite GU shouted one. Finally arrived. At this moment, his body was like electricity, and he rushed directly in front of Dormammu. At this time, Ancient One with the dark black lines on his forehead finally revealed his full strength. Wrong knot in both hands. Just like Doctor Strange's battle against Thanos. Thousands of magic duplications evolved in an instant. At this time, they waved the magic whip in their hands together, and fought with this Dormammu. After losing an opportunity to use Resurrection A, Liu Yan finally ushered in a turning point for himself now. But in his heart, he was also very clear. As far as the current situation is concerned, he is still extremely dangerous. Dormammu was playing against Ancient One Magician. There is still a lot of spiritual imprisonment placed beside him. That's all, Liu Yan can't rush out in a short time. Oops, awful. Is it possible that this time, I really want to plant? Overturned in the gutter. Liu Yan was finally flustered. But looking in front of him, Ancient One Magician, who was fighting for his blood, thought of Qin Gray, who was still waiting for his return from Kamar Taj. Immediately gritted his teeth, and he immediately cleared up his emotions. He turned his mind and said again, "No, I can't die. At least I can't die in the hands of this mentally retarded man." Thinking so, Liu Yan, who has a strong desire to survive, moved his mind again. The figure appeared directly in the system space. System, the lottery ticket for the plane of heavens I selected before, has it been issued? As soon as he entered, he asked the system impatiently. He can see it clearly. At this moment, I really want to reverse the defeat. It is estimated that Ancient One Magician alone will not work. At the critical juncture, I am afraid that some metaphysical power will still come. Yes, the previous selection of gods from Dormammu has been completed. Dormammu has withdrawn from the earth, and the selection rewards are issued normally. Do you want to use it now? Use. Liu Yan gritted his teeth. Hearing the system's reply, I was secretly relieved at the same time. Naturally, we must pay close attention to every minute and every second, and draw a lottery. After all, the outside world is anxious at the moment. No one knows how long the Ancient One side can be supported by Dormammu, who has the energy of the entire Dark Plane as support. System, if you don't take a European one this time, you will have a cold with me. Liu Yan took a long breath. With that said, all attention has fallen on the lottery panel in front of him, where the lottery pointer has already begun to rotate. 10 consecutive draws, the first reward has been released. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.